for fools, and he never took no edibles. I had the cereal for his hair, and then he came and he saw some shit he said.
What up, people? How we doing? Hello. Welcome to TwitchTok. Boom. There we go. What up? My name's Corey. Ooh, I didn't put on my glasses yet. I gotta put on my anti-glare glasses. What up, guys? Hi. How's it going? Welcome. There we go. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's, what should we do? What should we... well, you know, it was only a matter of time before I started yawning a bunch, right? I feel like we all knew that. That's right, gunner glasses, baby. Yeah. Go get a little background beat going on. Good morning. What up? Howdy. How are you? You having a hard time hearing? Okay, hold on. We'll fix it. We'll fix it. There. Is that better? I feel like you got it now. What do you mean sounds the same, bud? Levels look fine. I would say that's on you also, bud. Turn up your volume, bro. 'Cause I'm peaking. Let me, here. I'll grab my phone and take a look at it. How about that? Yeah, I can hear fine. Yeah, did he? Who did he go off on? What happened? I'm not quiet. I just checked. You're full of shit. That's on you, bro. Adjust your volume. Yeah, I agree. Whoa. Well, damn. I slept through the whole damn thing. Yeah, that'll happen. Daddy done done. Daddy done done. There we go. All right. There we go. Hi. Yeah, any verdict on the glasses? I really like them. Now we're just seeing if the sponsor comes, which... Oh, that's kind of a cool mountain. Look at that. Look at the way it just edges over. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I gotta turn these on, too. Get that flesh color light going. Well, welcome, guys. How we doing? It's a Tuesday. We're getting to it. Getting through it. I like them, actually. I really like the glasses. Let's see there. Yes. Yes. Boom. What up, Valhalla Vince? How are you? Headaches on a Tuesday here? Okay. Cool. I have not used them for driving, but No Diggity does all the time, and he swears by them. Like, Hi, how's it going? Just getting up and at him. Up and Corey at him. Yeah. Just spraying the ground for center point. That's good, right? What do you have to spray the ground for? New to the show. Where are you from, Corey? I'm from Hibbing originally. I live down by Minneapolis in Hopkins, Minnesota. Olson Tree. I like how it says you're new to the show, but you got a 1-month subscription. That's what I like. You getting up in yourself, that doesn't seem physically possible. What? You're a ranger. Yes, I am. I'm from Hibbing, Minnesota. I'm an Iron Ranger. What do you want? What do you want, bitch? Just kidding. Don't get mad. I didn't mean to lash out. Well, I did, but not. Oh, man. A lot of weird shit for you today. Figured you'd be stuck working for one of the mining companies or finger hut. Yeah, no, I'm not. Thank God. I don't live up there anymore. Thank God. I spray gas services. I cover Hopkins. Why is that at Minnetonka? Well, you've probably sprayed... I don't know what spray gas services is. I didn't realize people spray gas. Like... You just walk by and just throw gas on people. You're like, no, it's okay. I work for Centerpoint. Keep walking. Bro, keep walking, bro. Bro. You escaped the Northern Trap. I did escape the Northern Trap. Pretty rad, right? For 49ers equipment operators, it's scary. Yeah, the Northern Trap is a real thing. You're not wrong. Yeah, I have many friends that did not escape the Northern Trap. Yeah, well, a lot of them leave and then come back. That's the real secret of the trap. A lot of the trap is just people going back. It's a whole nother world up there. Yeah, it's different for sure. Oh, okay. Yellow flags and all that. Ground swelling with the yellow flags. Yeah, you got trapped. Car talk. The torque converter seal is leaking on the escape. Have to pull the transmission back out. Is that the same fucking escape you've been working on for like 3 weeks? I didn't know about that spraying the ground thing. That's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't move up there. Oh. Woodlawn and everything. It's so green. Such a grandma house. A weird ass blue bench. On the bright side, the used transmission works. I was able to test it before pissing out too much fluid. Yeah, that's fine. No place to magic is my reason I won't go. Yeah, fair. Kate Ellison's bruised girlfriend. Good morning, sir. Did you see the video from Breitbart yesterday? If not, I can send you a link in a bit. It was a bunch of docs talking about the Rona. Yeah, no, I haven't seen it. Send me that link. Yeah. No diggity. I'll be showing off my brake install on the 71 Dart on a stream in a week. I swear drum brakes are voodoo for most people. Yeah, that's probably fair. Layoff season? When's layoff season? I'm gonna stream like mad on layoff season. User joined your channel. What up, Rusty? How are you? How's that bit race? It's not that good. Let's get some bits. Let's go. Yeah. Does that work? There we go. There's a bit. Abbott. November through February. Yeah. So starting in November, you're going to stream like mad? That's what we're learning? I'm at the Pickled Loon. It's closed. Do you think I'll catch vid from here? I do think you'll catch vid from the Pickled Loon, but I think you'd catch it more if it were open. Shit, here comes Valhalla Vince with the, like, thrust. Look at that. Boom. Yeah, it doesn't live on surfaces. Yeah, right? What do we really know about it, though? I can't look up, guys. I'm just going to fall right back asleep. Going to stream box openings, but I think I'm only Magic guy in here. Yeah, but that doesn't matter. You can still do it. A lot of Magic people on Twitch, I would think. It's a man-made virus designed for the spread of fear and sniffles. I don't know that it's I mean, I think it was a lab accident, but I don't think it's like was designed for that. I think they just fucked up. I don't think it's like a bioweapon or anything, but I've never really thought that, so. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what we have for today. Just kind of easing into it today. Today's a kind of a low-key day. Got a bunch of fun stuff, including guess we can just go to this right away. We've got there's a new Remy video, which is kind of cool. Let's we'll watch that right away. We'll get started in the fun, shall we?
Well, now to economic news, where bars and restaurants are struggling to stay afloat, and local governments are not allowing them to sell drinks to go.
I've got more ice than Sweden, more makers than Eden, more 12-year-old whites than Prince Andrew. I've got more melon squeezings than Redskins team meetings. But how I'll make rent, I haven't a clue. Wasting away here in no Margaritasville, wishing I could sell cocktails to go. But the government claims we'd be a gross kind of place, just like these, where you can drink outdoors. I've got swanky Bacardi, more tank than a SWAT team, more fingers of Johnny than Amber Heard. If there's no ceiling above you, while you're sipping I'll cuff you. I guess us going under is what they prefer. Wasting away here in no Margaritasville, fully stocked with cocktail shakers and salt. Some people wail we put too many in jail. Well, these laws might be a good place to start.
There you go. Always nice to start out with a little Remy. Get that out of the way. Nice little Remy. I don't like it, but I also don't dislike it. Yeah, I feel like that's a fair assessment, right? I got my Foily Death Corona. Foily Death Corona. Okay. That's nice. Space Godzilla. Y'all like Space Godzilla? Did they really? That's really funny. Was there an actual card called Death Corona?
What happened?
Wait, okay, hold on. Let's check this out. This is fucking crazy. I didn't know any of this.
What happened with this card? It was $1,000 in pre-sale. There was so much hype because of the name, the discontinued name. How could it go so poorly? We're going to talk about it in a video that I'm calling Space Godzilla Death Corona Never Again. The video starts right now.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day. Thank you for spending your time with us. I'm Jake. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. Today we're going to talk about Space Godzilla Death Corona, the super rare, controversial, insane card Godzilla variant. Came out of Ikoria collector boosters. So much hype. I made 2 videos on this card, and I fell for it. And you know what? I was wrong. And we're going to talk about all of this. But before we can, I need you to go down, click like, click subscribe. If these are the kind of videos you're into, we are talking about MTG Finance today. So if MTG Finance is the kind of thing that freaks you out, if it offends you, ask yourself this. Is it as offensive as the fact that your precious fetch lands were printed, but reprinted in a secret layer that is $200 more than any other secret layer ever printed? Just because I acknowledge the secondary market and Wizards doesn't mean that they don't behind the scenes. Let's get into the video. It is June 17th, 2020. Space Godzilla Death Corona. This is, here we go. We're on eBay. We're going to go buy it now. Price plus shipping lowest first. This is the non-foil of this card. Let's sort completed listings, and let's sort by recent. Here's on June 17th, one sold for $27.50. Here's the foil, sold for $33.50. Here's $25. And then let's sort by recently so that we see the oldest. Actually,
not that anybody cares about Magic but us, King Kong, but like that's a weird shit. Like, cause I remember this card now because it was one of the Godzillas that was going to be worth a shitload of money, right? Like they were telling people this was going to be like $200 out the box, and now there's one for $9. That's hilarious.
Go down. We're going to scroll all the way to the end. I want to see what the oldest Space Godzilla listings went for. So this is in May. How much further does it go? This is as far back as it will go. Nope, we have one more page. All right, so here we go. This gives you kind of an idea without me having to go to the videos that I've done before in the past. But this is where Space Godzilla Death Corona was selling in April. Look at that, $3.99 pre-sale. Oh, actually, we do have all of it here. We have all of it here. This is perfect. We have $1,000 or best offer accepted for Space Godzilla Death Corona. This was in April of 2020. I fell for the hype. I'm going to be completely honest with you right now. I bought 4 Space Godzilla Death Corona. I bought the first one for $165 because it was the lowest that I had found it for at that time. I was super excited to buy it at that price. And within a couple weeks, I saw it go lower. I still thought, wow, this card is going to be exciting. This is going to be an amazing, amazing pickup if I can find it for lower than $150. After I had seen it sell for $1,000, well, it must have been a sure thing. If I can get in at $150, wow, that's an incredible price. So I bought one for, I believe, $165 or $170, and then I bought 2 after that from the same seller, each for $60. So at this point, I have 3 of them, okay? And then I bought a 4th one for $30. It came a little bit damaged, and so I got a little bit of a price reduction on it. All in, $165 plus $120 plus $20 is how much I spent on 4 foil Space Godzilla Death Corona. If it was $1,000 here, obviously this is hype. One sold for $350. We see $200 here. We see a foil one sell for $500. Why did it drop so much in price? I want to talk about it right now. How can we avoid this in the future? This was supposed to be so exclusive. This is the Wizards article. This is the statement on Space Godzilla Death Corona months ago when
Hype
our
card.
Behemoths was finalized.
I'll give you
the
$7.
world was a very different place. We all adjust to a world altered by, and keep in mind this was on April 2nd, 2020. As time moves on, a lot of things change, and so this is old news now. COVID-19, it was like hot on the press, but now we're all just kind of dealing with it. And Space Godzilla Death Corona was going to be changed to Space Godzilla Void Invader. You can read this article. I'm going to put it into the description of the video. Make sure to check the descriptions of the videos. That's a good place to find important information if you want to read this on yourself. Essentially, Space Godzilla in the lore of Godzilla uses a move called the Corona Beam. This card was called Space Godzilla Death Corona while it was in development. That's how they printed it. And then coronavirus happened, so they decided that they're going to change this variant on Arena to say Space Godzilla Void Invader. And the only product ever that will have Space Godzilla Death Corona will be the first wave of Ikoria booster boxes in the box topper, and then the first wave of collector boosters. The first wave of collector boosters will have this exclusive name, this scary Death Corona name that will be reminiscent of this insane time we're living in. But essentially, the card is just an uncommon, and it's not that great of an uncommon at that. It's an 8/8 for 8 with Death Touch if you cast it straight up. Otherwise, you can cycle it, and when you do, you can put a Death Touch counter on a target creature you control. So the first thing I want to talk about is the rarity of this card. It is an uncommon, and what we learned that despite the fact that this is a foil alternate art Godzilla variant.
Okay. Well, we're not going to waste a whole lot of time on that because I'm sure some people don't give a shit about Magic, but like, that doesn't seem like that good of a card either, though. Pretty gross. Coronavirus. Okay. Oh yeah, where's that? Magic is fringe. Crazy money in it, though. Yeah, well, so Magic is one of those games where when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time on it, and now it's like I look on it, and I still have a lot of my cards, and that amount of money is fucking crazy. Like, coronavirus 40 ounce? Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, well, everybody does. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, what's crazy is like, my collection personally is worth thousands of dollars. Holy shit, it's Porn Star Mike. What up, buddy? How are you? Welcome. I did not think we would live to see the day where Porn Star Mike was in here. Yes, I know you want to buy some of my cards, King Kong. Like, that's all you say. Every time I interact with you, you're like, oh, buy this, oh, buy this, oh, buy that. Stop trying to buy my gems, bro. It just hurts. You know what I should do is I should just come on the air and just have all my Gaia's Cradles for you and just wave myself around them. No, it's crazy though, because like a lot of these cards weren't worth much and now they're worth a bunch. I'm watching Barr in the courts. Oh yeah, is he? God damn it, what's he doing? What's he talking about? I knew that was on today. You know what? Let's pop in a little bit here. We'll see what we can look at.
The same period.
Yeah. All right, here we won't watch a lot of this, but let's just peek in, see what we're dealing with here.
Of time is 11, and the overall numbers of police shootings have been decreasing. Nevertheless, every instance of excessive force is unacceptable and must be addressed appropriately through legal process. As is happening.
Wait, producer Mike, you got banned today? What'd you do?
But apart from the numbers, I think these events strike a deep chord in the black community because they are perceived as manifestations of a deeper, lingering concern that in encounters with police, blacks will not be treated even-handedly. They will not be given the benefit of the doubt. They will be treated with greater suspicion. Senator Tim Scott has recounted the numerous times he's been unjustified.
This is Barr is testifying right now.
One prominent black professional in Washington said to me, African Americans often feel treated as suspects first and citizens second. And I think these concerns are legitimate. At the same time, I think
volume is low though. There's nothing I can do. I've like
the problem is rooted in some
literally I'm trying to crank up. I suppose I can
racism generally infecting our police departments. It seems far more likely that the problem stems from a complex mix of factors which can be addressed with focused attention over time. and we in law enforcement must be conscious of the concerns and ensure that we do not have two systems of justice. Unfortunately, some have chosen to respond to George Floyd's death in a far less productive way by demonizing the police, promoting slogans like "all cops are bastard," and making grossly irresponsible proposals to defund the police. The demonization of the police is not only unfair and inconsistent with principles of all people should be treated as individuals, but gravely injurious to the inner city communities. When communities turn on and pillory the police, officers naturally become more risk averse and crime rates soar. Unfortunately, we are seeing that now in many of our cities. The threat to black lives posed by crime on the streets is massively greater.
Aaron had a
than the
moment. What do you
threat
mean Aaron
posed
had a
by
moment?
police misconduct.
Maybe
The leading
crosstalk.
cause of death for young black males is homicide. Every year, approximately 7,500 black Americans are victims of homicide. The vast majority of them, around 90%, are killed by other blacks, mainly by gunfire. Each of those lives matter. It is for this reason that in selected cities where there has been an upsurge in violent crime, we are stepping up and bolstering the activities of our joint anti-crime task forces.
Yeah, maybe Mikey did this
Finally,
too.
I want to
Like,
address a different breakdown in the rule of law that we've witnessed over the past 2 months. In the wake of George Floyd's death, violent rioters and anarchists have hijacked legitimate protests to wreak senseless havoc and destruction on innocent victims. The current situation in Portland is a telling example. Every night for the past 2 months, a mob of hundreds of rioters
Mikey Two Milks is
going
gonna
to
go drunk with power.
Federal
Watch.
courthouse and other nearby
yeah,
federal
maybe
property.
that's what happened, producer Mikey. You made an
Equipped
enemy.
for fight. Armed with powerful slingshots,
You lost your
tasers,
live feed of this on
sledgehammers,
Facebook. This
saws,
one I
knives,
found is on
rifles, and
YouTube.
explosive devices.
So you just type in bar live, it's all
Inside
over.
the courthouse are a relatively small number of federal law enforcement personnel charged with a defensive mission to protect the courthouse. What unfolds nightly around the courthouse cannot reasonably be called protest. It is, by any objective measure, an assault on the government of the United States. As elected officials of the federal government, every member of this committee, regardless of your political views or your feelings about the Trump administration,
Yeah, I
should
am.
condemn
Hold on, I need
violence against federal officers and the destruction of federal property.
That's
Thank you,
my
Mr.
mask.
Chairman, and I appreciate your listing for me the areas of concern in your opening statement, and I'm looking forward to addressing them all.
Thank you for your testimony. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions, and I will recognize myself for 5 minutes. On July 22nd, you joined the President as he announced the expansion of Operation Legend, an initiative... Let me start that again.
Uh-oh.
On July
Snap.
22nd, you joined the President as he announced the expansion of Operation Legend, an initiative to combat violent crime in Kansas City.
On my page, what do you
Approximately
mean?
$61 million in DOJ
W
grants.
did?
I am
Yeah, it was a
confused,
dude
however, as to
named
the purpose of
Anthony
launching Operation
Greenberg
Legend
or something like that.
at this moment in time. In December of last year, you announced
Chairman
that the
Nadsack.
department would divert over $70 million in grants to 7 U.S. cities under an initiative called Operation Relentless Pursuit, correct?
That's right.
And Operation Relentless Pursuit targeted a familiar list of cities, places like Albuquerque, Baltimore, and Kansas City, correct?
Correct.
At the same July 22nd press conference, you initially claimed that over 200 arrests had been made under Operation Legend, correct?
Correct.
But you misspoke.
Correct.
The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Missouri later confirmed that only a single arrest had been made under the auspices of Operation Legend, correct?
I don't know.
And the 199 other arrests were made under Relentless Pursuit or other programs. Well, that was correct. I think you could be forgiven for being confused. Operation Legend appears to be little more than a repackaging of existing operations in these cities. So why all the drama? Why join the President at the White House to announce a bold new operation that appears to be neither bold nor new? Understandably, Americans are very suspicious of your motives here. There are those who believe you are sending federal law enforcement into these cities not to combat violent crime, but to help with the president's re-election efforts. The president has made clear that he wants conflict between protesters and police to be a central theme of his campaign. So let me ask you directly, Mr. Barr. Yes or no? Yes or no? Did you rebrand existing projects under the legend in order to assist the president in an election year?
I wouldn't call it.
Mr. Attorney General, would you agree with me, at least on principle, that it is improper for the Department of Justice to divert resources and law enforcement personnel in an effort to assist the president's re-election campaign?
No, Mr. Chairman, in the fall, we did inaugurate an anti-crime initiative because we were concerned about increasing violent crime in a number of cities, and we called that relentless pursuit. Unfortunately, COVID intervened, and our agents who were detailed for these assignments could not perform the operation. So the operation was squelched by COVID. So we couldn't complete or make much progress on relentless pursuit. However, in the intervening time, we saw violent crime continuing to rise, and a lot of that was triggered by the events after the death of George Floyd. So we did reboot the program after COVID started breaking, and we could commit the law enforcement.
Yeah, everything's
resources
hijacked politically. You're
to
not wrong.
actually accomplish the
This
mission,
does not have anything to
which
do with
is
stimulus.
reduce violent crime. Now, I regret that COVID interrupted our law enforcement activities, but it doesn't obviate the fact that there is serious violent crime in these cities. These police and mayors have been asking us for help, and we have put
Did you say porn star, Mike? I don't understand what that
additional
means.
federal agents and investigators to help deal with it.
Have you, now, yes or no, have you discussed the president's re-election campaign with the president or with any White House or any surrogate of the president?
Well, I'm not going to get into my discussions with the president.
Well, have you discussed that topic with him, yes or no?
Not in relation to this program.
I didn't ask that. I asked if you discussed that with...
I'm a member of the cabinet, and there's an election going on. Obviously, the topic
So the
comes
answer
up.
is yes.
Well,
The answer
the
is
topic comes up in cabinet meetings and other things.
Okay.
It shouldn't
And
be a
as part of-
surprise that the topic of the election.
I didn't say I was surprised. I just asked if you'd done that. So as part of those conversations with the president or his people about the re-election campaign, have you ever discussed the current or future deployment of federal law enforcement?
In connection with what?
In connection with what you just said, in connection with your discussions with the president or with other people around him of his re-election campaign, have you discussed the current or future deployment of federal
What's
law
that guy
enforcement?
eating?
As I say,
His
I'm
own
not going to
teeth?
get into my discussions with the president.
Is that
but
John
I've made it
Gruden?
clear that I would like to pick the cities based on law enforcement need and based on neutral criteria.
But you can't tell me whether you discussed.
No, I'm not going to discuss what I discussed with the
Can
president.
you commit today that the department will not use federal law enforcement as a prop in the president's re-election campaign?
We are not using
I just want to
federal law
close
enforcement.
with this thought. You really can't hide behind legal fictions this time, Mr. Barr. It's all out in the open, where the people can see what you are doing for themselves. The president wants footage for his campaign ads, and you appear to be serving it up to him as ordered. In most of these cities, the protests had begun to wind down before you marched in and confronted the protesters. And the protesters aren't mobs. They are mothers and veterans and mayors. In this moment, real leadership would entail de-escalation, collaboration, and looking for ways to peaceably resolve our differences. Instead, you use pepper spray and truncheons on American citizens. You did it here in Washington. You did it at Lafayette Square. You expanded to Portland. And now you are projecting fear and violence nationwide in pursuit of obvious political objectives. Shame on you, Mr. Barr.
Can I just say, Mr.
Shame on you.
Can I just
My
say,
time
Mr.
has expired. For what purpose does Mr. Jordan seek recognition?
Can I get one word in?
Excuse
No,
me.
your
Can I just
time's
say something?
expired.
My time has expired. For what purpose does Mr. Johnson
Look
seek
at that.
recognition?
So his time is
Questions for the
expired,
witness, and I will yield the floor to him
which
to
means
respond.
Barr doesn't get to
Mr.
talk?
Chairman,
That's
you
really funny.
conflated two different things. The effort, like legend, is to deal with violent crime that's committing on the streets of the city. Again, predatory violence like murder, shootings. which are soaring in some cities right now. That does not involve encountering protesters, as you refer to it. Civil disturbance is a different set of issues. And I just reject the idea that the department has flooded anywhere and attempted to suppress demonstrators. We make a clear distinction between demonstrators.
The facts speak for themselves. This is my time, Mr.
I'm answering, and you know, the fact of the matter is, if you take Portland, the courthouse is under attack. The federal resources are inside the perimeter around the courthouse, defending it from almost 2 months of daily attacks where people march to the court, try to gain entrance, and have set fires, thrown things, used explosives, and injured police, including just this past weekend, perhaps permanently blinding 3 federal officers with lasers. We are on the defense. We're not out looking for trouble. And if the state and the city would provide the law enforcement services that other jurisdictions do, we would have no need to have additional marshals in the courthouse.
On behalf of hundreds of
I'm
millions
not
of
the biggest
Americans,
fan
thank
of
you for
Barr,
that
but yeah, he's not a
clarification, and thank
pushover.
you
That's
for
pretty
being
cool.
here. And thank you for your service today and your willingness to do this in very challenging times. Mr. Attorney General, we're very appreciative. It's not an easy job. It's a vitally important one. I so appreciated what you said in your opening statement today, which is what you said in your confirmation hearing. The Attorney General has a unique obligation. He holds in trust the fair and impartial administration of justice. We appreciate that so much. The Democrats have asserted here this morning, and they continue to say in the media, that under your leadership, the Justice Department has become highly politicized. Why is that a totally unfounded allegation?
Because actually,
now they're just giving him
what
softballs.
they're trying to do is restore the rule of law, and the rule of law is, at essence, that we have one rule for
Look, I'm
everybody.
going in this
If you apply
jacket.
one rule to A, the same rule applies to B. And I felt we didn't have that previously at the department. We had strayed. And I would just ask people, I'm supposedly punishing the president's enemies and helping his friends. What enemies have
That would be
one
cool.
indictment that has been under the department that you feel is unmerited, that you feel violates the rule of law? One indictment. Now, you say I helped the president's friends. The cases that are cited, the Stone case and the Flynn case, are both cases where I determined that some intervention was necessary to rectify the rule of law, to make sure people are treated the same.
Looks like it's an inside the
said
actor's
Stone
studio.
was prosecuted under me. And I said all along, I thought that was a righteous prosecution. I thought he should go to jail. And I thought the judge's sentence was correct. But the lying prosecutors were trying to advocate for a sentence that was more than twice anyone else in a similar position had ever served. And this is a 67-year-old man, first-time offender, no violence, and they were trying to put him in jail for 7 to 9 years. And I wasn't going to advocate that.
I'm
because that
pickpocketing
is not
justice.
the rule of law. I agree the president's friends don't deserve special breaks.
We're
but they
watching
also don't
Barr's
deserve to be treated
testimony
more harshly
today.
than other people. And sometimes that's a difficult decision to make, especially when you know you're going to be castigated.
Have you,
for
porn
it.
star Mike?
But that is what the rule of law is, and that's what fairness to the individual ultimately comes to. Being willing to do what's fair to the individual.
Amen, and thank you for that. And by contrast, what the previous DOJ did under the previous administration was politicize law enforcement. The Obama-Biden administration sabotaged the Trump transition. They illegally spied on the Trump campaign. They unmasked members of the Trump campaign. They employed aggressive tactics on their campaign officials. Senior FBI officials, we all know on this committee, carried over from the Obama administration, carried on their abuses into the Trump administration and into the whole impeachment scam and all the rest. Let me ask you just one question, because my time is running out. President Obama's Attorney General Eric Holder famously referred to himself as President Obama's wingman. He said in an interview, quote, "I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. There's still work to be done. I'm still the president's wingman, so I'm there with my boy." That's what he said famously.
Wait, I don't know what we're talking about with this wrestling scandal. That's crazy.
No, I've already described what I think the duty of the Attorney General is.
And in your office, you are then free to act independently of the president. Isn't that true?
That is true, particularly on criminal cases. It's required.
And that's exactly what he has asked you to do. Isn't that right?
Yes.
have no further
Time
time.
is-
I yield back. Thank you.
As well, you have no further questions. Your time has expired. Ms. Lofgren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, it's obvious what is happening here from the video played during the ranking member's opening remarks. It's clear that the president's playbook is to divert attention from his catastrophic failure in dealing with the COVID-19 situation. In Canada, our neighbor to the north, in Europe, the virus has been reduced to such a level that people can safely go out and not worry about being infected. But here in the United States, millions of Americans have been infected. Tens of thousands are dying, and the president needs to divert from that failure. And what is the playbook? The playbook is to create the impression that there is violence, that he must send in federal troops, and that the American people should be afraid of other Americans and trust the president because he's going to send in all troops to American cities. And that's how he hopes to win the election.
Bombers, who are you fighting with? What's even going on?
Joint task forces, that involves the cooperation of state and local authorities. My man!
Excuse me, bitch!
The reaction has actually been in reverse proportion. People are showing up because the troops are there. And I'd like to say that so many of them, I would say most of them, are non-violent. We've all heard about the wall of moms, who show up to make sure that people are safe. And here's what they say. They say they've been tear gassed night after night, left vomiting, that they've been shot at with rubber bean bags, pepper spray. So this brutality has created even more demonstrators. I'd just like to ask you this. When the president issued his executive order, they indicated your department should prioritize investigations. Has your department started any investigations pursuant to the executive order that the president issued?
Which executive order, Congresswoman?
The executive order that asked for the deployment of troops to protect the monuments and the federal facilities.
Yes,
On June 26th.
yeah, I wouldn't say it was troops, but we have initiated investigations. Yes, we've made arrests of people who have been rioting and taken down statues. But I think your characterization of Portland is completely false.
I would like to, we can get into that, but I'd like to ask you a question about surveillance, if I may. We've heard reports that cell site stimulators known as stingrays or dirt boxes are being used to collect phone call location and even content of phone calls. Drones are being used that may have face recognition or cell phone interception technology, and that there is bulk collection of internet browsing history. What specific authority is the department using for these surveillance tools?
I really can't speak to those instances if they in fact occurred. I'm glad to go and try to determine what you're talking about.
Well, actually, I'm asking about authority, not the details.
Well, I think most of our cyber activities are conducted by the FBI under their law enforcement powers to detect and prevent crime, federal crime.
I think the American public should know that this surveillance technique isn't just about the people in front of the courthouse. If a husband and wife call each other and one of the spouses has a cell phone that's within range of one of these technologies, not only the location, but the actual content of that couple's conversation can be scooped up using this technology. So this really isn't just about the demonstration. This is about the privacy of all Americans, and it's all being violated for the president's political purposes of trying to create a scene, create a reason, divert attention from the COVID failure. I think it's really very unfortunate and a disservice to the American people. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. So
Point of order,
The
Mr.
gentlelady
Chairman.
yields back.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, real quick.
Gentleman will state his point of order.
Could you ask those members who choose not to come to work to silence their cell phones on the video because it's distracting to what we're doing here
That
today?
is not a point of order. I now recognize Mr. Chabot.
Mr. Attorney General, would it be accurate to say that it's this administration's responsibility, and of course you're part of the administration, to see that federal laws are upheld and that the federal property is secure and safe and protected? Is that correct?
That's right, Congressman. There are sort of distinct missions. One mission is to enforce federal law. And by the way, the federal government is the sovereign of the United States. We have two sovereigns here in the United States, and we enforce the federal law all over the country. Every square foot of the country, we enforce federal law. The other is protecting federal property, and specifically U.S. courthouses, which are the heart of federal property in all 93 jurisdictions in the United States. And we have the obligation to protect federal courts, and the U.S. Marshals specifically have been given that obligation. Federal courts are under attack. Since when is it okay to try to burn
Barr is
down
the one
a
testifying.
federal
This
court?
isn't a campaign speech.
If someone
against
went
Trump.
down the street to the Prettyman Court here, that
Bombers,
beautiful
Corey
courthouse
Adam,
we
it's
have right at the bottom
balls
of the
deep.
hill, and
I said
start
fuck
breaking
Jim
windows
Jordan,
and firing
and he went off on how
industrial-grade
Nadler said
fireworks in
this
to
and
start
that.
a fire,
Prompted
throw
Jordan.
kerosene
Okay,
balloons in, and
sounds like you guys have a lot of loving to do. You got to come a long way to meet this healthy conclusion. Bitch, retire. You're not healthy enough to go to work. Yeah. And I'm the deflector. Typical, okay? It's China. Ooh, this guy looks mad.
Group of people, and you mentioned
Mr. Chabot. Mr. Chabot. They look like siblings, yeah. That's true. I said fuck Jim Jordan. You asked if I was a wrestler. I said nothing to do with it. Then suddenly shouting about Nadler. Yeah, that's weird, I guess. That got really weird. Anthony Barr has a creepy Garrison Keillor look to him. Like you wouldn't let him watch your kids ever. Yeah, you're not wrong. Balls deep. Look, A-Bomber, you sound like a kid who has been or is touched. That's real weird. Like, okay, so first off, Balls deep, I don't know what you were trying to accomplish, but you're basically admitting you know what kids who have been touched sound like. That kind of implies you've been touching kids. So maybe watch how you go about your insults. That's pretty sad. King Kong Dong, we can agree that if you can't go out because of your age, Rona, you should be retired at home. Yeah. Scary data collection whataboutism. Get over yourself and stick to the AHs on cam. Asshats? Does that stand for asshats? She didn't ask or say anything valuable discussion, but she got her soundbite. Yeah, well, and her phone was interfering with the camera the whole time, so it was like... Yeah, right? Alleged. Terry Bradshaw needs a haircut? Yes!
mayors,
Terry Bradshaw does
city
need a
councils
haircut.
and governors
That
did their
is the
jobs
comment
and
that
kept
saved
the
all
peace.
this.
Would it even be necessary for federal law enforcement personnel to be there in the first place?
No, and that's exactly the point. Look around
Is
the
that guy
country.
doing drugs?
Even where there are these kinds of riots occurring, we haven't had to put in the kind of reinforcements that we have in Portland because the state and local law enforcement does their job and won't allow rioters to come and just physically assault the courthouse. In Portland, that's not the case.
General, some have derisively referred to these law enforcement personnel as stormtroopers and worse. Does that accurately describe them? Or would you like to set the record straight?
No, they're obviously not stormtroopers. Normally we would have a group of deputy marshals in a court that would be, in business suits and ties or regular civilian dress. Those would be the deputy marshals as the protective force for the court. But after almost a month of rioting in Portland, we sent in, I think it was around the 4th of July timeframe, we sent in about 20 special operations marshals. And those are tactical teams that are able, are padded and protected so they could deal with this kind of thing. Up until last week, I was told we had our stormtrooper from the Department of Justice amounted to 29 marshals in the courthouse. 29 marshals. As of until recently increased, I think there were 95, I was told, 95 DHS and Federal Protective Service and other DHS officers trying to protect the courthouse and 3 other buildings. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to protect federal functions and federal buildings, which are a very small part of the city, but the rioters go at them, and we have gradually increased our numbers there to try to protect those facilities. If the state would come in and
when did the Death Star get involved?
Streets in front of the courthouse, we wouldn't need additional people at the courthouse.
Thank you, John. My time's expired.
Gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Jackson-Lee.
Mr. Chairman, before I begin, I'd like to submit into the record a picture of Lewis and Clark History Department chair shot at protests in Portland. Ask unanimous consent. Place that into the record. John Lewis in 1963 said, "We are tired about being beat by police. We're tired of being put in jail. We want our freedom now." Mr. Attorney General, in your remarks, you indicated that we made great progress since that time, and you indicated that the killing of George Floyd was shocking. I disagree. It was outright cold-blooded murder on the streets of America, unfortunately by police misconduct. You seem to have a difficult time understanding systemic racism and institutional racism that has plagued so many. Mr. Attorney General, do you understand a black mother's or parent's talk to their child, to their son? Do you know what that is?
I think I do.
I don't know if you do, but Trayvon Martin, Ahmaud Arbery, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Sean Bell, and George Floyd. Black mothers and fathers have had to talk to their sons about police violence. I take no backseat to the history of this committee that has stood for good policing, not misconduct. And so I ask you this question: does the Trump Justice Department seek to end systemic racism and racism in law enforcement? I just need a yes or no answer.
To the extent there is racism in any of our institutions in this country and the police, then obviously this administration will fully enforce this.
So you agree that there may be systemic racism?
To the extent, in where?
Let me continue my line of questioning.
I don't agree that there's systemic racism in the police department.
Specifically,
generally in this country.
I'm reclaiming my time, Mr. General. Specifically, do you understand the violent impact of racial profiling? And do you support the end racial profiling, racial and religious profiling in the George Floyd bill, including the removal of the strict interpretation of qualified immunity, which would leave individuals like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd without any relief at all?
No, I'm opposed to eliminating qualified immunity, and I don't agree that it would leave the victims of police misconduct.
Well, let me share with you some aspects.
Without any remedy at all.
I'm reclaiming my time.
Does anybody let anybody finish anymore?
Profiling. After the death of George Floyd found that while black people make up 19% of the Minneapolis population and 9% of its police, they were on the receiving end of 58% of the city's police use of force incidents. In addition, we've seen that black men are twice as likely to be stopped and searched. Hispanic drivers, 65% to receive a ticket, and Native Americans in Arizona 3 times more likely to search and be stopped.
How much of that is just poverty, though? Honestly, like poor people get arrested more, and we have systemic systems that have made different ethnicities poor.
Or practice investigations, a practice to end bad policing and police violence. It addresses police violence at an institution level rather than just focuses on acute cases. If you understand that, then why has your department only pursued one pattern or practice investigation since President Trump took office that could stop systemic racism?
No, poor people get tickets because their cars are broken down more. They're doing more wrong.
If you read my statement or listened to my statement.
Yeah, poverty, environment, and behavior. Agreed.
Specifically acknowledge that there was a difficulty in this country with the African American community.
Mr. Attorney General, I have short time.
Well,
Can you just tell
like
me
to
why you have not done a pattern in
Jesus
practice?
Christ. Answer this
What was the
question.
reason?
I have
And you
short
asked me what
time.
thought
I
the
yield my power
response
back.
was, and I thought the response to this is, in fact, training of police, I think the police believe that that's a response. I was talking to a black
Then let me
chief of
continue.
police.
Mr. Attorney General, I want to respect you, but I have a short time. For example, 18
I want to
USC
respect you,
Section
but I have a short
242, which
time.
makes
So
unlawful the
when he
denial of
starts
rights under the color
when he
of
starts
law.
answering
Can you
questions in a
defend
way
the
she
fact that
doesn't
in the
like
first
to, she
7
just
months
cuts
of
him off?
FY 2020, federal prosecutors filed only 242 charges in just 27 cases in the Trump DOJ? And were you aware that in FY 2019, federal prosecutors brought Section 242 charges in just 49 cases in the United States?
Producer Mike, I was just
And
loading that.
Are you aware of how many cases we've had? 184,274, which means that in FY 2019, only about 27 out of every 100,000 prosecutions was related to Section 242 charges. Do you have a reason for that?
Yeah, yes, I do. I will get you the numbers on it. I don't know them off the top of my head, but actually our criminal prosecutions under 241 and 242 are extremely strong and are comparable to, if not exceed, prior administrations. But at the beginning of this year, most of the, very few jurisdictions had grand juries that were open. No grand juries.
I think the reason is because it was really skinny. It was not your focus. Your focus was more to let out friends like Roger Stone and Paul Manafort, while Tamir Rice, whose case has not been taken up, was playing with a toy gun, was killed by police at the
they are
age
kinda
of 12.
useless, aren't they?
Breonna
Super
Taylor was
weird.
sleeping in her apartment when she was killed by police at age 26. And Rashad Brooks, 27, was killed just for sleeping in his car in a Wendy's parking lot. And George Floyd from Houston, Texas, known as a humble man, was murdered in the streets of Minneapolis crying, "I can't breathe." I would hope that the DOJ would focus on systemic institutional racism because there is good policing. That's what we're trying to do in the Justice and the Judiciary Committee, and that's what we need you to join us on, Mr. Attorney General, and to recognize that institutional racism does exist, and until we accept that, we will not finish our job and reach the goals and aspirations of our late iconic John Lewis. With that, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Mr. Gomer.
Attorney General Barr, we've been hearing about these peaceful protests in major cities around the country, controlled by Democratic mayors and city councils.
Is that what you want to talk about next? No diggity.
Experience. Have you ever seen so many people hurt, injured, and killed at peaceful protests in your life?
I haven't seen it, no, not at a peaceful protest. Obviously, as I've said from the beginning, these peaceful protests in many places are being hijacked by a very hardcore of instigators, violent instigators. And they become violent, and their primary direction of violence is to injure police. Police casualties far exceed anything on the civilian side.
Yeah, weren't there over 50 police injured in Chicago just in the recent days? And now I'm hearing this allegation that this administration is helping spread coronavirus, COVID-19, and yet these are some of the same people that just castigated the president for shutting down travel from the location where the virus was coming from. And now some seem more interested in defending the Chinese Communist Party than they are our own country. But what occurred to me, hearing this allegation about this administration helping spread COVID, would it be a good idea then perhaps, if that's the big concern here, that maybe the federal government should shut down the protests during this COVID-19 spread so that we can satisfy our colleagues that you're doing more to stop it? Has that ever been a consideration?
No, I've never considered that.
Well, it would apparently stop some of the allegations being thrown here. Now, I know you know history. Going back to 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Mao Revolution.
We're going all the way back to the Bolsheviks? That's crazy.
New. Trying to get, even David Horowitz, I introduced one time as a former socialist. He said, no, I was a full-blown communist. But he has pointed out that he started looking away from the group he was in because he saw they were interested in trying to provoke the police to kill somebody so that they could really create mayhem. You're familiar with that tactic by Marxists, are you not?
What up, Tovar?
Yes.
It is a dangerous time.
They're all kind of idiots, though, right?
I know you
When do
know
we get to put their heads on
that
spikes?
U.S. attorneys are supposed to serve.
What'd you say? Say it again.
When do we get to put their heads on spikes?
Clearly not soon enough.
Exception.
Yeah, what's really weird is how this is supposed to be just a testifying for the Judiciary Committee, but it's just like stocked political lines. You know what I mean? It's like everybody on the Dems are like this and that. And like that one lady, that Jackson lady, was all like, every time he was answering a question, she's like, I'm limited on time. It's like, well, then why are you asking questions? Like, just talk at him then. Don't ask people questions and then get mad at them.
Funny. Like, what are we trying to accomplish with this? When the guy can't even answer questions.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly. And that's, yes, exactly.
I mean, Barr's a snake oil salesman. I know he's not, like, peddling anything none of us fucking want, but at least let the man fucking talk.
Well, and he's also the attorney general that has prepared responses for what you're asking. Let's hear what their side of it is.
And jurisdiction to the
Yeah,
U.S.
I mean,
Congress.
clearly,
Hopefully,
that's why I robbed him.
We'll figure that out at some
It's
point.
gonna be a fun civil
now,
war.
is Bruce Orr still working for the FBI?
I just want to see duels in the House again.
Yeah, right?
Well, we have heard so much information about he's basically being the go-between between the DNC, the Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, the Russian propaganda that were incorporated into his dossier. And I know Kleinsmith, Christopher Wray, indicated he had been given the chance to resign, go get a better job. I'm wondering how long Bruce Orr is going to be staying where he is. It's incredible to me that he's still there.
Well, I can't talk about, individual personnel matters.
Well, thank you for your service. I'm sorry for the abuse you've taken when you're just trying to do your job. Appreciate it very much. You're back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Barr, I'm the chairman of the Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties, so this is most pertinent hearing to me. Firstly, I'd like to ask you if you will work with us and allow the head of the Civil Rights Division, Assistant Attorney General Eric Dryband, to testify before this committee this fall.
I'll talk to him about it.
Will you encourage him?
I'll talk to him about it.
All right. I've closely watched actions taken by the federal government in Lafayette Park in June and currently in Portland, Oregon. According to a DOJ document dated June 4, received by this committee, 1,500 federal agents from 10 different agencies were deployed to confront protesters in Washington, D.C. At Lafayette Park, which has long been honored and accepted as a place of protest in our nation's capital.
Man, Christopher Lloyd sure let himself go.
On the first day of June, the world watched in horror on live television as federal agents deployed by the administration and with you present and telling him to get it done, used force to clear Lafayette Park so that the president, with you and others at your side, could walk across the park and have a photo op in front of St. John's Church. This was anathema to the bishop of the diocese and the rector of the church. It was also an affront to the Constitution and to the American people. Given the timing and the coordinated attack against the peaceful demonstrators, it strains credulity that this was not planned for use of political purposes. And just yesterday, Major DeMarco testified to another committee of Congress that the protesters were peaceful, and that's what the majority of people have said, and the response was excessive.
Marty, we got to do something about your federal agents,
When
Marty.
did you first learn that the president planned to walk through the park and go to St.
He
John's
went
Church?
too far back.
Yeah.
First, I'd like to respond to what you said.
Would you please answer my question? My time is limited.
See, they just did it again. What's the point of asking questions?
Sometime in the afternoon that the president might come out of the White House, and then later in the afternoon I heard that he might go over to the church.
So it was absolutely necessary the park be cleared for his walk.
Yeah, Kelsey Grammer for sure. What up, nicely?
Plan to move.
Mr.
plan to move
General,
the
it was
perimeter
necessary
down the
that the
street.
park be cleared, and it was done. And you said, get it done.
Well,
I have the time. Thank you. In Portland, we've seen mothers and we've seen veterans who are peacefully protesting.
not threatening the federal courthouse, beaten and gassed. Unidentified armed federal agents violently attacked demonstrators in a violation of the First Amendment's freedom of assembly and arrested citizens without individualized
I have the
suspicion in
time,
a violation
Marty.
of the Fourth Amendment's
Yeah,
protection against unreasonable
we're going back to the
search,
future
seizure,
where I
and
still have all the
warrant.
time.
You've gone through the Fifth Amendment and due process and just negated it. In the 10th Amendment, which
He can't
leaves
just walk
general
out. He's the
policing
Attorney
to law
General. Diggity. He's
enforcement
got to be
to
there.
the
This is the
state has been forgotten.
Judiciary Committee. He has to sit
Maybe
there.
what happened was your secret police were poorly trained, just like your Bureau of Prisons guards were poorly trained and allowed the most notorious inmate in our nation's last several years, Jeffrey Epstein, to conveniently commit suicide. Sad. You misled Congress and the American
yeah, 'cause
people
the
about
Dems
Special
had nothing
Counsel
to do
Mueller's
with that.
findings with your quote summary, unquote, of his report. It was issued about a month before you released the redacted portion of the Mueller report. But you set the stage. You set the stage
does
such
look like
that
Les
the special
Desmond.
counsel objected to the accuracy of how it was reported by the press and what you said. And federal judge Reggie Walton, appointed by George W. Bush, declared in a
This guy
ruling
really
that your
just
summary was,
went
quote,
from
distorted,
like, violating
unquote,
civil
and misleading,
liberties and clearing
unquote,
out a section
and that the
to
court
get
could
to a
not
church
trust you.
to Epstein committing suicide.
Right, but like the Epstein thing, and this is the thing people don't talk about with Epstein, is that if you look at that list, the Lolita Express list, there's way more Democrats on that list than Republicans.
Everybody
but nobody talks about it. Like there's
Eminem was on that plane.
Yeah, but you know who wasn't on that plane?
I wasn't on that plane.
That's not what this list said.
Wait, there's another list?
Yeah. It's just Tovar over and over again. No, Trump's name wasn't on that list. Like, the entire thing, like, this is what I keep talking about with Trump, is that, like, I don't like the guy, and if you do, that's fine. I'm not here to argue about that. What I'm here to tell you is that if Trump doesn't win that election, Jeffrey Epstein is still alive and trafficking children.
Like,
and that Lolita list, like think of all the stuff the Dems have done now to actually crucify Trump. Like, at this point, Russian collusion, even if you believe in it, has to be documented as a conspiracy theory. There wasn't enough evidence to convict anybody, and the only conviction they had was Flynn, and they proved that they set him up. That's our government right now.
Have you read his book?
Flynn or
Flynn's book?
I have not.
That's on my list. I hear it's very.
I just got done with the Bisbing book.
Yeah, you were listening to that when I saw you the other day.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome. Really good book.
The racial history of the state and the Portland Police Bureau. I'd also like to introduce an op-ed from Mary McCord, who writes her words.
Yeah, this guy's all like,
justify the department's
you did this thing. And the other thing, like, so here's something that nobody likes to talk about with that president photo op thing, right? Like, you might not even like this, Tovar, but this is the reality. You can be mad at Trump for clearing out those protesters for that photo op, but, like, the attorney general and everybody down the line, their number one priority is safety of the president. So you can't really be mad at anyone that did anything there, because they're just, like, doing what they're told to do. And it's not like they're executing people, so it's not like the fucking Nazis, like, defense. It's literally they were ordered to do something, so they did it. That's all. And, like, you can be mad at Trump for it. I think it's bullshit that he's clearing out a church for a photo op, for sure. But, like, this guy is like fucking Epstein photo op. Who knows what he's even talking about now?
His actions have posed and continue to create a clear and present danger to the even-handed administration of justice, to civil liberties, and to the constitutional order.
Okay, without objection.
Madam Chair, one more unanimous.
All of these guys have had to hide out in an underground.
This is the article that says
right, yeah,
Miller
right.
says
Like, shut up.
Violence in Portland is a myth. That's from Politico and a number of other journals.
Without objection. Mr. Collins is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Attorney General Barr. Wow. I'm beginning to believe, frankly, that you're probably that just hadn't come out yet, probably will in a little bit. You're probably the cause of the common cold and, and possibly even the COVID-19.
Listen to, like, how different the tones are. The Republicans are just like patting him on the back, and the Dems are trying to crucify him. This is crazy.
Said something earlier today that really
this
made
is
me
our
think.
government,
Said,
you
why
guys.
all the drama? That's the most ironic statement coming from this committee in the last 18 months that I've ever heard of. The drama that we're bringing up today. We're seeming to just contort ourselves to get to some way to show that you have nefarious motive. I believe, like some of our side here, I believe the biggest problem you have is telling the truth. I believe that's the problem that they have with you. You'll tell the truth and you'll take responsibility for your actions, and I think that's why you're being attacked. But I want to continue just on this, quote, peaceful protest for a second. You made a comment just a second ago on these rights. Talking about the courthouses just down the street, what if they decided, do you think that this body right here would rise up if they decided to go tonight and paint the Capitol building?
This body, I'm not sure.
No, that's not kind of how it goes nicely. Like, nicely, the reality,
I'm not so sure.
The reality is this, and I've been saying this for the last 6 months now. The reality of our political spectrum is this. The Democrats are more fascist right now than the Republicans are. And the Republicans have actual Nazis in their party. That's the reality of our political spectrum right now. Do you want fascism A or fascism B? Because democracy kind of went out the window, 30 years ago?
Everybody in the room's a fascist.
Everybody in the room being fascist.
Law enforcement officers, stormtroopers.
Yeah, and we're seeing that thing played out over and over. Let's switch back to something else, though, that is I think, more appealing here. We've talked about the investigations, and especially going with Flynn. Do you believe that there was actually a basis to go after General Flynn? I mean, what we've seen so far, what's been released, and especially keeping an investigation open, Peter Strzok kept it open. Do you believe there's actually a basis for the beginning of this investigation to start with, or continuing it?
Well, I would just say, I asked another U.S. attorney in St. Louis who had 10 years in the FBI and 10 years in the Department of Justice as a career prosecutor to take a look at it, and he determined, based on documents that had not been provided to Flynn's side and not been provided to the court, that in fact there was no basis to investigate Flynn. And furthermore, it was clearly established by the documents that the FBI agents who interviewed him did not believe that he thought he was lying.
Well, there's another part of this as well that concerns what has been given to the
Antifa
courts
is
in
not
the interviews
literally like Antifa by the tenants are. They show up and they're willing to suppress people's ideology with violence. That is fascism. Like, sorry. Like, I like you nicely, but like, if you're like Antifa is fa, like that is provable. Like, again, if you're showing up willing to commit violence, like, it has to be fascism, right? Because people get to talk. This comment section seems really alt-right at times. Yeah, that's probably fair. It's getting weird, right? It's getting weird. Antifa is literally a group. What are you talking about? Anti-fascists? That's what it started. It's literally a group.
between the rhetoric, between the investigation. I think Durham investigation
How is that an
something
argument?
most of us are waiting
When you
for
point
because
out
we
the
can't
fact
seem
that
to get this
Antifa
committee
is
to actually
fascist,
believe
and
that
then they go, well, they're not a group. I don't
Right, but they're literally a group. Here's their fucking like thing.
Yeah,
Anti-fascist
but that shouldn't even be an
action.
argument.
Right, like that's the thing. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
in his report,
So you
except
can't point out
politics.
evidence of
And that's what this
fascism and then
committee has
have
become
someone
all
like
along.
turn around and
But I
tell
have
you,
another
yeah, but
problem,
that's
and I've
not a
talked to you,
real
I've written to you.
like,
Right.
dude, that's ugh.
Right, and that's kind of the problem that you have, is like you can literally look up how Antifa is a group, and they're showing up using violence to suppress people's right to speak, which is, wait for it, literally fascism.
Before bringing those charges, were you aware of that?
Yes, I was.
Okay, as an attorney, and again,
I'm trying to meet you halfway. I'm saying they're both fascists, all right?
Constantly under attack from this committee and from others and all over the
Yeah,
country.
I
and
feel like
especially
that's
from
an
the Secret
acceptable
House.
like middle
As an
ground, right?
attorney,
They're
in a
both
Yeah,
serious
I mean,
process,
like I wouldn't say it's acceptable, but it definitely seems to be what the case is now.
Yeah, it's the reality.
Yeah.
And without obtaining an indictment from the grand jury, and while you announce the charges, lay out a case that is full of falsehoods.
I've said that I would have preferred that he had used the grand jury and had waited till the Georgia Bureau had completed its
Pornstar
investigation.
Mike, that guy was messing with my joke on your post and convinced.
Thank you. With that,
to
the
ban me.
chair
I'm a
recognizes.
Trump fan. What are you talking about?
Mr. Johnson from Georgia.
Thank you, General Barr. Your opening statement reads like it was written by Alex Jones or Roger Stone. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes.
What does that even mean?
Now, I'm sure that we can agree On some things we disagree on a whole lot, but I'm sure we
Is
can
it
agree
fascist
on the
of
fact that
Germany
President-
to suppress any speech or physical items representing Nazism? Are they threatening people with violence for saying it? Then yes, it is fascism. I'm not saying it's not right. Like,
Read
sometimes
that
fascism
sentence.
can be it. What?
It says suppress any speech in his sentence. I want you to read those 3 words over and over again until you get it nicely. Suppress any speech. That's fascism.
If you're suppressing speech or threatening to with physical violence, that is fascism. So yes.
I would rather
and
my
guess
racist-
what? Guess what? The people doing that are claiming to be anti-fascist. Yet again, anti-fascism is fascism.
I would rather my
General Barr
racist neighbor
several
do
hours
it out
after-
in the open than secretly behind my back.
Oh, that's always been my argument. That's why I want Nazis to gather in public. I want to see how big these organizations are getting. I don't want them to gather in the fucking dark ends of the web. Anti-racism is racism. There is no such thing as anti-racism. Like, that doesn't, like, you're the racist or you're not racist. Anti-racism would technically be racism, I guess.
Hours after President Trump tweeted his dissatisfaction with the Stone recommendation, and you changed that recommendation.
No, the night before.
I don't have love and I don't have hate in my heart, I guess.
Well,
if that's
Monday
what you're
night.
asking.
I'm not anti any ideology. If you're not acting
Yeah.
on your racism, I don't give a fuck what you think. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but that's what I've always said. Like, this idea that we can go to war with thoughts. I mean, I grew up reading way too much 1984 to fucking get mad about thought crimes, man. I just can't. I can't be bothered. Sorry. And this idea that anyone's not racist is weird because everybody is racist. Like, if you think in your heart you're not racist, you're wrong. Everybody is racist. How you process that, how you go about your actions, how you interact with the world, that determines what kind of person you are. But this idea that you can get to a point where you're not racist, like, that doesn't exist. That's not possible.
Sentencing recommendation.
I mean, I bet you there's a couple Buddhists that have pulled it off.
I didn't ask.
I mean,
for
I
those.
doubt it. I bet there's people they hate deep down inside.
Their mothers.
Yeah.
No,
Wasn't the sentence that was recommended by the line prosecutors according to the sentencing guideline calculations?
It was within the guidelines, but it was not within Justice Department policy, in my view.
General Barr, you're expecting the American people to believe that you did not do what Trump wanted you to do when you changed that sentencing recommendation and lowered it for Roger Stone. You think the American people don't understand that you were carrying out Trump's?
I was not. I had not discussed my sentencing recommendation with anyone at the White House or anyone outside the
President
department.
wanted you to do, and that's what you did.
No.
Attorney
Let me ask you, do you think it's fair? Do you think it is fair for a 67-year-old man to be sent to prison for 7 to 9 years?
It was in accordance with the sentencing.
No, it was not.
You just said that it was, and your line prosecutors will testify that it was also. Now, I'm going to move on from that.
The department.
Your time as Attorney
It is not
General
the
for
depart.
Herbert Walker Bush, you never changed the sentencing recommendation for a friend of Herbert Walker Bush, did you?
No, as I recall.
All right, that's all I'm asking. No. And over the course of your time as Trump,
Nothing was never elevated to me.
over the course of your tenure with Trump, you've changed 2 sentencing recommendations, not 1 but 2. Correct?
Which were they?
Yeah, Michael Flynn.
I didn't change it.
Well, you
Ha
said. Well, you indicated.
ha! Got you, bitch. That's awesome.
You changed it because the original Flynn sentencing recommendation was for Flynn to serve 0 to 6 months. But under your authority, the Justice Department supplemented that recommendation with a pleading that stated the Department of Justice's agreement with Flynn's lawyers that probation would be a reasonable sentence, and that the DOJ would not be seeking.
It's not the same as changing it, though, is it?
Isn't that correct?
I don't think that's what it said.
Well, that's what it said, sir. You go back and read it.
I think both pleadings
Sir,
said that.
Reclaiming my time, prior to you
The
becoming
gentleman's
Attorney
time has expired.
Madam Chair, you can give a speech or you can ask questions. If you do the latter, you need to let the witness answer the questions. And that's the chair's obligation,
I
chair's
believe-
responsibility to allow that to happen.
Mr. Buck is recognized for 5 minutes.
Appearing before the committee today. General Barr, there is a disturbing
what a
pattern
fucking
we've
joke
seen
our
throughout
system has
history
become,
with
right?
totalitarian
Like, this is
systems
just
of
what we're
government.
doing now?
The leaders
We're
first
just going to
seek
pat
to
them with
disarm
either
the
terrible
population.
hard questions,
Then they encourage
terrible
goon
easy
squads
questions, but
to
we're not going to let them
suppress
answer either
opposing
way.
voices.
Good one,
And
America.
finally, once they have disarmed and silenced the opposition, these authoritarian leaders institute policies that root out and crush freedom in every form. Unfortunately, the American left has been infected with the same totalitarian desire to remove firearms and silence opposing views as part of a campaign to achieve its political ends. We've seen this scenario play out in every major Democrat-run city in America. Progressive leaders push to disarm law-abiding Americans to further their influence while watching as crime rates soar. We even saw failed presidential and Senate candidate Beto O'Rourke proudly tell Americans, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15 and your AK-47. Now the American left is actively cheering as its fascist militia Antifa rages in the streets. Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization that hijacks peaceful rallies, organizes armed riots, attacks peaceful protesters, burns buildings, loots stores, and spreads hate. Reports of Antifa-linked attacks began circulating in 2017. These thugs, often armed with sticks and pepper spray and other instruments, showed up to silence college Republican groups at Berkeley. The left was silent. Then in June 2019, Antifa jumped into the national conversation after journalist Andy Ngo was brutally attacked in Portland. No arrests were made. The left again was silent. Almost exactly 1 year ago today, the Wall Street Journal ran an op-ed stating Portland has to do something to deter political violence or the city will get more of it. Of course, the city's feckless leadership has only further encouraged Antifa's violent antics.
That's a good
As a
word.
result, we've seen 61 straight nights of violence in Portland. Antifa's fascist totalitarian activities are now oozing into other Democrat-run cities. Last Sunday, Antifa launched a violent assault on a peaceful pro-police demonstration in Denver, Colorado. Conservative leaders in Colorado, including Randy Corcoran, a Denver area lawyer and radio talk show host, organized a family-friendly event in honor of Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. The atmosphere was peaceful, and counter-protesters were given plenty of space to advocate their message.
Let's get some
But as
bits
the
for the
afternoon
news,
wore
baby.
on,
Come on, let's
swarm
get some
of
news
violent
bits in here,
Antifa
guys.
thugs infiltrated peaceful Black Lives Matter counter-protesters and began assaulting pro-police Americans. These are 20 and 30-year-old thugs assaulting 50, 60, 70, and even 80-year-old Americans who only wanted to show their support for law enforcement. What's worse, Denver's cowardly liberal leadership ordered police to retreat once they saw members of Antifa entering the fray. A Denver police detective, Nick Rogers, apologized for this terrible decision. Detective Rogers summed it up best in a recent radio interview, quote, "I'm sorry on behalf of the rank and file. That's not us. That's not who we are. It just kills me that we let good people down." He continued, "I found out that a retreat order was given by the incident commander, and we had one lieutenant step up and say, 'We aren't leaving.' This lieutenant said, 'These people are going to get killed if we don't stay.' So he kept his people there. That's the reason this thing didn't get worse." End of quote. These are sad times in America. Free speech and the right to keep and bear arms are both being threatened by violent anarchists, and the best our chairman can do is call Antifa a myth. General Barr, this has to stop. We can't let Antifa continue terrorizing our country. Can you please tell us about the appropriate use of civil and criminal RICO statutes to address violent criminal groups like Antifa?
In the wake of the beginning of these riots, I asked our joint terrorism task forces, the FBI's joint terrorism task forces around the country, to be our principal means of developing evidence and prosecuting violent extremist terrorists who are involved in these activities. And one of the tools, obviously, we would use is RICO, which can be used against an organization. But that doesn't mean that we currently have a RICO case pending.
Okay.
I thank the gentleman, and do you have anything you want to say in response to the speeches that have been given by the other side, and then you've been cut off?
Yeah, well, let's, on Lafayette.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Could I ask for a brief recess?
Yeah, Madam Chair, the witness like a break.
Mr. Barr, Mr. Barr, Mr. Barr, 10 minutes?
for a brief. 10 minutes? 5.
Okay.
Recess for
The committee will stand in recess for 5 minutes.
All right, assemble. All right, well, they're going to recess. Maybe we'll come back and check in on it, but it seems like a whole lot of nothing going on, if we're honest. That's our system, guys. Well, I feel better, right? Yeah, give me some ammo. Can I get a brief recess? I'm gonna go brush my teeth with this gun. Does the music get going a little bit more?
When we
hold up to reconstruction.
How about that game? What game? Yeah, show did take a turn today, didn't it? It's true. Get used to nothing happened to fix anything, yeah. Yeah, well, the moment he was responding to things they didn't like, they were like, that's my time, or I need my time, or don't do that shit. Like, just, yeah, it's super weird. This is our system, guys. Tovar, how do we fix this? I know you're just going to say with pikes, right? Hell yeah, give me those bits. We need some bits, baby. We haven't had a lot of bits this week. We need bits. Bits and subs and donations. Keep the show rolling. Keep the lights on, baby. I'm reclaiming my time. Yeah. I'm reclaiming my time. Bring your own bits on screen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. What up, buddy? Yes, sir. I can hears you. Can you? Or you just left? That's awesome.
I think I'm back.
Oh, yeah. I was like, yeah, I can hear you. And then I like went over to toggle over and I'm like, and he's gone.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't know if my mic was live or not. Kelly Berger called.
Oh, nice. There's no fixing this, right?
No, I mean this is off the rails. It's been off the rails for a few years now.
But it like keeps like every time I think it can't get worse, it just keeps getting worse.
Well, that's what happens when you're off the rails. Like the thing is it's noticeably off the rails now, so it's gonna get super nuts.
Ugh. I don't want it to get super nuts. I just want it to go back to like some semblance of fucking, I don't know, like that whole fucking thing right there, man. It's like, oh, I yield my time. You know, anytime Barr, like, I'm gonna use all my time unless Barr is saying shit I don't like, then I want my time back. But the moment I think I have Barr, let him talk. It's fucking crazy.
I think the reason it's gonna get super nuts is because a lot of us didn't want it to get super nuts for so long that we postponed the inevitable until now it's super nuts.
Yeah, I don't necessarily buy that either, though. I think what's happening is you had a bunch of, what I think happened is I think you have a bunch of college professors that are teaching kids that radicalized socialism is something that's going to help them. And the reality is, whether or not you believe that, and I'm not politically getting into it, whether or not you believe that, that ideology is pretty opposed to the current system. So you couldn't not be nurturing a civil war of sorts.
Want to know what I think?
Oh, here we go. Yeah, what do you think?
I think this country has been socialist since like World War II and maybe a little bit before that. Yeah, since the Great Depression, and our downfall has been like it was gonna happen since then.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that at all.
The New Deal. Since
Yeah,
we started,
I mean, like, you
like,
can have
well,
parts of
we've been a
socialism
socialist
without having a
military
social.
since
You
World
can
War
have
II.
parts that are socialism without having a socialist system.
Can you though? 'Cause
Yeah.
here's where we are.
No, that's not like we didn't get here because the government controls means of production. That's not how we got here.
For war.
For war, what?
They've controlled the means of production for war so long that they militarized their police to the point that, like, we're having multiple breakdowns all at once on top of a political breakdown.
But they don't control those means of production. All the militarized stuff is being manufactured privately.
Sure, by companies that are basically owned by the government. You think that Boeing is really that private of a company? I mean, yeah, it's traded
Boeing's not
privately,
making
but,
most of the weapons, and a lot of the weapons companies are
Lockheed,
private.
all of those companies, sure, they're privately owned companies, but they're so contracted by the government that you could say. That
But a
they
lot
are
of those are so
government-
far above the government. I mean, like Honeywell doesn't give a fuck. They'll do whatever they want. 3M doesn't give
And
a
in
shit.
lot
They'll
of
do what they
ways,
want.
Those industrial complexes have come to control the government itself.
But then that's not the government being in control, which is just
That's
to my.
socialism destroying the government.
It's not. That's capitalism.
They're socialist government contracted companies. Like, these companies, have been getting socialist money from the government since World War II, and now they're in control of the government that is crumbling.
I guess I just don't think they're in charge of it, though. I think you've got, like, people that are in charge, but I don't think it's them.
This is.
Oh, hold on. He's back. Hold on. Here. We will pick this up in a second.
It wasn't Monday, actually. Just to refresh your recollection, in a prior interview, you said he came in the week before. He came in to see some senior staff.
Yeah, Tovar,
So
you
no,
weren't
that's
saying
what
what I
said.
want,
He
so I
may have-
reclaimed my
he may
time.
have had discussions with people in the deputy's office. I was not involved in those discussions.
This shit's
Basically,
ridiculous, man.
as far as I can recall, I had no substantive involvement in Stone until that Monday when he came in the morning.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Attorney General, the week before when he came in to see the senior staff that he had worked with the week before when he was working on
No, I
your
said
staff.
I think he had raised it with people in the deputy's office. That's senior staff too.
Right,
Department
I understand.
of Justice. But I was not involved.
He started on July 31st. The first week he was there, he came to raise this issue.
I think he started February 1st.
Right. The first week he was there, he came into your office to raise the issue of sentencing. In the interview you did with ABC, you said you
No,
never.
I don't think he came.
That's what you told ABC News. You said that he's talked to senior staff, not you perhaps, but he talked to senior staff.
I don't know what, I think I speak English. I said that before he came in to see me, I believe he had some conversation.
Conversations with senior staff, right? That's right. Before he came to see you, we're saying the same thing.
But the first it was raised with me
was on Monday.
Was on Monday.
Did you talk to the senior staff after they spoke with him?
I think at a 9 o'clock meeting, they said that he was trying to work something out on sentencing, and he was actually optimistic that something could be worked out. So I didn't really think of it as an issue until that Monday when he told me that
Right.
the line prosecutors.
He filed the sentencing memo, and the sentencing memo called for 7 to 9 years. It's the policy of the U.S. Attorney's Office to suggest a specific guideline range, which they did, and then you overruled the line prosecutors. They asked for a lower sentence, and you gave some reasons. You talked about health. Health is to be considered only for an extraordinary physical impairment. Did that apply to Roger Stone, Mr. Attorney General? That's what the guideline said.
Well, actually, I can't reveal all the information.
I'm not asking what his health was, but did that apply?
No.
Okay,
Did what apply?
His health. Was that the reason?
Health is a reason to.
I know. Is that the case? Is that the reason for Roger Stone?
Or you're asking for a lower sentence. Let me go on. It says
I
age.
stated why.
Let me go on.
No,
Let me go on.
I stated
Age,
why I felt.
hold on one second. Age can be consideration. It says only if it creates conditions that are of an unusual degree and distinguish the case from typical cases. He was 67. Did
The
that
judge
apply to him?
agreed with me, Congressman.
No, that's
The
not what
judge
I'm asking.
agreed
I'm
with
not
me.
asking you that.
The
Mr.
judge
Craig.
agreed
I'm
with
not
me.
asking
This
whether-
whole jury's out of
I'm not
order.
asking that.
The
And
judge
issue
agreed
here
with
is- The issue here
me.
is whether Roger Stone was treated differently because he was friends with the president. When you asked to reduce the sentence, you said enhancements were technically applicable. Mr. Attorney General, can you think of any other cases where the defendant threatened to kill a witness, threatened a judge, lied to a judge, where the Department of Justice claimed that those were mere technicalities? Can you think of even one?
The judge agreed with our
Can you think of even one? I'm not asking about the judge. I'm asking about what
Wait,
you did.
but saying the judge
to
agreed
reduce
is
the
one,
sentence
right?
Of Roger Stone.
Yes.
Can you think, Mr. Attorney General, he threatened the life of a witness.
And the witness
and
said
you
he
view
didn't
that
feel
as
threatened.
a technicality, Mr. Attorney General.
The
Is there another time
Can I
when
answer
that
the
had
question?
happened?
Can I have just a few seconds to answer
Sure.
the question?
I'm asking if there's
Okay.
another time in
this
all
case,
time of the Justice
the
Department.
judge,
when
the
that's-
judge agreed
You
with
won't
our
answer my question,
the
Mr.
judge
Attorney
agreed
General,
with
and it's unfortunate. And the appearance is that, as you said earlier, this is exactly what you want. The essence of rule of law is that we
Just
have one
bring
rule
back
for
duels.
everybody. And we
Yeah,
don't in
right.
this case because he's a friend of the president.
But listen, like, they won't let him answer. Like,
Maybe
it's like
goes back
you're
to
trying to
your,
trap him in questions that you won't let him answer.
Mr. Attorney General, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm a member of both this committee as well as the Appropriations Committee, and I've been able to see firsthand both the funding and the operation of the department. Additionally, before I was elected to Congress, I served on the city council in my hometown of Montgomery, Alabama. And I've witnessed the importance and the value of various Justice Department grant programs and the resources to state and local governments. For example, the Alabama Fusion Center, which is designed to combine information between federal, state, and local government, private sector entities, and the intelligence community, has been a recipient of these federal grants. And the Alabama Fusion Center is also responsible for the Alabama Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and has done a great job in work in combating child exploitation. Do you believe that Congress is adequately funding programs that provide state and local agencies with the tools that they need to be effective in preventing and pursuing crimes such as child exploitation and human trafficking, particularly over the internet?
I think we could always use more resources for that, Congressman, but if I could just have a moment of your time to respond to these questions here on, that were being asked about the Roger Stone sentencing. The U.S. Attorney came to me and said that the 4 line prosecutors were threatening to resign unless they could recommend 7 to 9 years. But there was no comparable case to support that. It would have been a very disparate sentence. All the cases were clustered around 3-year sentence for that. And the way they had gotten to the 7 to 9 was by applying an enhancement. And there are debates all the time within the Department of Justice about the proper calculations under the guidelines and whether a particular enhancement applies or doesn't apply. And those are usually worked out and resolved. But here they were saying that they were taking an enhancement that has traditionally been applied to mafioso and things like that, threatening a witness, and they were applying it to him because he had a phone call at night where he told a witness that if you want to get it on, let's get it on, and I'll take your dog. And we felt that that technically could apply, but in this case, it really didn't reflect the underlying conduct. And the overarching requirement at the Department of Justice is that we do not presume and automatically apply the guidelines. We make individual assessments of the defendant and what is really just under the case, and nothing that is excessive. And these individuals were trying to force the U.S. Attorney, who was new in the office, to adopt 7 to 9. And I made the decision, no, we are going to leave it up to the judge. And that later, when that was not done, that evening, I told people we had to go back and correct that the next morning. So that's the sequence of events. But at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The judge said she would not have gone along, she didn't think, with the first recommendation because the enhancement artificially inflated the exposure of the defendant, and she came out exactly where I had come out. So at the end of the day, the question is fairness to the individual, and even though I was going to get a lot of criticism at the end of for doing that, I think at the end of the day, my obligation is to be fair to the individual. Thank you for permitting me.
Yeah, I'm happy to have yielded you time to respond. That being said, Mr. Attorney General, as I am a departing member of Congress and have just a few short moments left, I just want to express to you in the department how important this issue that I originally asked you about is to me, both as a member of Congress representing my constituents in Alabama, but also as a mother of two beautiful children. And I am increasingly alarmed about the way that children are just one click away from being on a website, a forum, or a chat room, or a social media site where bad actors may be lurking. And whereas I only have a few short seconds left, I would just ask you in the time that I have left in Congress that we could continue to work together to combat child exploitation and human trafficking. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing on this.
Absolutely, Congresswoman. And as you know, one of the most difficult issues coming up is encryption, because as this material gets encrypted in the chat rooms and the areas where they groom these young children, once it becomes encrypted, it'll be very hard for us to police it.
Right. Thank you so much. I yield back. Thank you.
The gentlelady yields back. Ms. Bass?
Attorney General Barr, when it comes to police engagement, last August when speaking to the National Fraternal Order of Police, you shared your views on police engagement with the public. You stated, and I quote, "Underscore the need to comply first, and if warranted, complain later. This will make everyone safe, the police suspects, and the community at large, and those who resist must be prosecuted. I repeat, zero tolerance for resisting police. This will save lives." Do you stand by that statement?
Yes, I think it's very important.
A zero tolerance attitude is costing lives, not saving them, especially in communities of
Well,
color.
I'm not saying that.
I reclaim my time. A movement and
I
protests
reclaim
have
my
arisen
time.
in response to police
Anytime
brutality.
you don't want the
Here
witness
are
to
a few
talk, I reclaim my
examples of
time.
Who bears the cost of zero tolerance? Elijah McClain was walking home from a convenience store when he was approached by police. He had not committed a crime. Police held him in a chokehold for 15 minutes, then injected him with ketamine, not under a doctor's supervision, but at the direction of non-medically trained and unlicensed police officers. Are you familiar with that case?
No.
Do you know how frequently ketamine is used by law enforcement to subdue civilians, especially people of color?
No.
Did you know if police departments have been documented as directing paramedics and EMTs to eject ketamine during arrests?
No.
Have you, well then, I guess you haven't evaluated the use of force tactics since becoming AG
Wait,
and
you didn't
especially
do this other
this
thing that I'm
particular
leading you
tactic
into?
of
Well, I guess I can't go to here.
subduing Suspects with ketamine.
Not with respect to ketamine, no.
Will you commit to directing the department to evaluate the protocols around the use of ketamine, chokeholds, and other methods used by federal law enforcement officials when making arrests or detaining subjects?
I wanted to, I
Absolutely.
reclaim my
Under
time.
The President's executive order, we are reviewing
Thank you, and especially
use of force and working
Good.
with police departments.
Especially the ketamine. That's
I'll look
pretty
into the
outrageous. George Floyd was killed by a police officer via
Ketamine is a
chokehold. For 8
tranquilizer.
minutes
If somebody's
and 46
flipping out, that's
seconds,
what they use.
A police officer knelt on his
Also,
neck
Special K
as
is
he
kind
begged
of
for his
fun until
life.
you get spun.
He was suspected of using a counterfeit $20 bill. That's how zero tolerance can amount to a death sentence for black men when used in communities of color. With
mean,
George Floyd
he
screaming,
also had
as we all
priors.
know, he couldn't breathe.
And he was
Now
on drugs.
consider
I mean,
James
again, doesn't
Holmes,
deserve to die.
who
but-
murdered 12 people and injured 70 others in a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, the same town as Elijah McClain, where he was arrested. James wore body armor, had a knife, semi-automatic weapons, and an AR-15. Yet he was calmly arrested by the same police department as Elijah McClain without a chokehold or an injection of ketamine. Dylan Roof used a gun to murder 9 people and injured another at Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in South Carolina. When he was arrested, no chokeholds, no injections, he was treated so well that officers brought Dylan Roof Burger King after arresting him. Are you familiar with that case?
Yes.
I raised those 2 examples to follow up on what my colleague from Texas highlighted earlier, that the department is not doing enough to address issues of racism,
Special K
bias,
is
and
ketamine.
brutality in law enforcement. When someone who commits mass murder is calmly arrested and served Burger King, while a young man walking down the street is placed in a chokehold and injected with ketamine, then dies. You said that under the executive order, the administration is looking at chokeholds. What have you determined so far?
Well, we're setting up a system of certification of police departments, and part of what our charter is to come up with criteria that will be used for certification, including limitations on use of force, specifically including chokeholds.
So in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, part of it called for a national registry of law enforcement officers as a resource for police chiefs
Is that
to
true,
determine
Balls Deep? Same
who
guy
are the
made
best
both arrests?
candidates for jobs. As you may or may not be aware, Tamir Rice might be alive today if the police chief who hired him had known that that police officer had been fired from another department. What is your view of a national registry of law enforcement officers?
The second aspect of the president's executive order is to set up a database like that, so that all
What do you think of this? Well, we're already doing it.
Force around the country go into that database, and if police departments aren't reporting that information, they wouldn't be certified. So we do believe in one national point where you can go in and get determinations of excessive force on law enforcement candidates for jobs.
Good, thank you. And I do want to comment on part of your opening statement when you were saying that after the Jim Crow period, that our justice system was equal. And I don't believe that that's the case.
I said the laws were made equal.
The laws are made equal. They are certainly not applied equally. We do have systemic problems in our law enforcement system, our criminal justice system on every level. The fact of the matter is 2.3 million people in the United States are incarcerated. We incarcerate 24% of the world's prisoners. 34% are black,
Yeah, but how
while
many of that
African
is
Americans
weed?
are just
Get rid of all those
13%
people.
of the
Weed guys,
U.S.
you're out.
population. So justice is still not equal, nor are our laws. And I think when we look at how many people are incarcerated or how many people are killed, it is not the numbers. It is the percentage to the percentage of that group in the U.S. population. I yield back the time.
The gentlelady yields back. Mr. Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, you've described the prosecution of Roger Stone as righteous. That's clearly something that the President and I disagree with you on. I would suggest that perhaps the prosecution of Andrew McCabe, who lied 4 times, thrice under the penalty of perjury, would be more righteous. I would suggest to you that uncovering the criminal conspiracy that existed where people in our own government were trying to convince intelligence agents and operatives around the world to destabilize our elections and to discredit our president would perhaps be more righteous. But as we sit here today, I don't think that Mr. Stone or Mr. McCabe or any of those other folks are killing anyone or burning down our buildings. And so I'd like to focus our effort on the most acute need I believe our country has. You've recently said that you believe Antifa to be a terrorist organization. What's your basis for that belief?
I'm not sure I said terrorist organization. I said we're investigating it as domestic terrorism. But Antifa, there are a number of violent extreme groups in the United States, and they're across the spectrum. Antifa is heavily represented in the recent riots. That's not to say they're the only group involved. And they have been identified as involved in a number of the violent mob actions that have taken place around the country.
And Mr. Attorney General, I saw the chairman of the Judiciary Committee recently say that Antifa is a myth, that their involvement in this violence isn't something that is real. What's your reaction to the chairman?
Well, I don't think it's a myth. Antifa can be best thought of, I think, as a umbrella term for what is essentially a movement comprised of loosely organized groups around the country. In some areas of the country, there are a number of groups, and there are sort of centers of activity. The groups, as I say, are loosely organized, but they are definitely organized. But since they have an anarchic temperament, they don't get along very well with each other. So I'm not suggesting it's a national organization that moves nationally. They tend to get organized for an event, and there's a lot of organization right before an event occurs, but we see a lot of the organization during the mob violence.
And that is a really important distinction when determining how to apply particularly our RICO laws to an organization like this. If Antifa is merely something that inspires people to go out and commit violence, that strikes me as legally distinct from Antifa being an organizing influence to assist people in committing crimes. One question I get from my constituents as they watch the death and violence and disruption and chaos in Seattle and in Portland and in other places is whether or not there's a risk that that could metastasize to other areas of the country. Have you given consideration to the risk that might befall other American communities if the Department of Justice were not to take action to protect and preserve federal property in places like Portland?
Yes, absolutely. We are concerned about this problem metastasizing around the country. And so we feel that we have to, in a place like Portland, where we don't have the support of the local government, we have to take a stand and defend this federal property. We can't get to a level where we're going to accept these kinds of violent attacks on federal courts.
And if you did what my Democrat colleagues were asking, if you merely abandoned that federal property, allowed it to be overrun, allowed the people inside to be harmed, is it your view then that Antifa and other violent people engaged in these acts would simply stop, would simply accept that as their sole victory? Or is it your expert opinion, having dealt with a number of law enforcement and criminal cases in your legal career, that they wouldn't stop, that they would go to the next town, to the next community, and potentially inspire more violence?
There's no doubt in my mind that it would spread.
And what comfort can you give Americans in my district and around the country that you will stop this, that you will stop the burning and destruction of federal property, and that you will give confidence to regular Americans that they can go out in the streets without the risk of this terrorism?
Well, as you can see in Portland, we have a relatively small number of federal officers who have been withstanding this for almost 2 months. It's a great strain, but we cannot just stand aside and allow the federal court to be destroyed.
Thank you for your service and for your great work. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Barr, you started your testimony with eloquent words about the life and legacy of John Lewis, fighting systematic racism, voter intimidation, civil rights. The one thing that you have in common with your two predecessors, both Attorney General Sessions and Attorney General Whitaker, is that when you all came here and brought your top staff, you brought no black people. That, sir, is systematic racism. That is exactly what John Lewis spent his life fighting. And so I would just suggest that actions speak louder than words, and you really should keep the name of the Honorable John Lewis out of the Department of Justice's mouth. Let me also say, you mentioned bogus Russiagate. In your opinion, as the Attorney General of the United States of America, did Russia interfere or attempt to interfere in the 2016 election?
Yes.
In your position as the Attorney General of the United States, is Russia attempting to interfere in the 2020 presidential election?
I think we have to assume that they are.
Thank you, sir. Now, let's talk about the integrity of the election, which is also something Congressman Lewis fought for. Jared Kushner implied that the president could move the election day. Can a sitting U.S. president move an election day?
Actually, I haven't looked into that question under the Constitution.
Well, 2 U.S. Code, Section 7 says federal election day is the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. So if you take that as a correct statute, is there any executive action by a president?
I've never been asked the question before. I've never looked into it.
As Attorney General of the United States, do you believe that this 2020 presidential election will be rigged?
I have no reason to think it will be.
President Trump tweeted that the election will be rigged, but he also tweeted that when he was losing to Hillary Clinton, and he tweeted that the day after it was Fox showed that he was losing to Trump. But I don't want to be too political. Do you believe, as the Attorney General of the United States, that mail-in voting will lead to massive voter fraud?
God.
I think there's a high risk that it will.
Do you ever vote by mail-in ballot?
Apparently I did once at least.
But you believe that other people voting by mail could lead to massive fraud?
No, what I've talked about, made very clear, is that I'm not talking about accommodations to people who have to be out of the state or have some particular need not to, inability to go and vote. What I'm talking about is the wholesale conversion of election to mail-in voting.
You do understand that African Americans disproportionately do not survive COVID-19 coronavirus. You are aware of that?
I didn't hear the question.
You are aware that African Americans, black people, disproportionately die from COVID-19 coronavirus, correct?
Yes, I think that's right.
And not that it would be the first time that African Americans would risk their lives to vote in this country to preserve its democracy. But the suggestion is that them having the ability to vote by mail would somehow lead to massive voter fraud, but I won't stick to that.
No, I didn't say that. I just state I think what is a reality, which
Selling
is that
subs.
if you have wholesale mail-in
Buy some for me, man.
voting,
Get some
it
subs.
substantially
Let's go.
increases the risk of
Subs,
fraud.
bits. Yeah.
But it doesn't make it likely.
That's all I said.
Now, I also saw on TV that the president said he's not sure that he'll accept the election results. Can a president just protest because he lost an election?
Protest in what sense?
Well, can he contest an election just because he simply loses?
Gore versus, Bush v. Gore was.
Well, I think that was over a slim voter margin. I'm talking about if it is very clear that the president has lost an election, does he have a remedy to contest the election?
Not that I'm aware of.
Let me go back to what Representative Bass mentioned. You mentioned the number that there were 8 African Americans killed by the police and 11 white people killed by the police.
So far this year.
If you use those numbers, that's 85% of that population is white, 15% of that population is black. But if you actually look at the deaths, according to the numbers you just gave, 42% of the deaths are African American and 58% are white. That is a glaring disparity in terms of population, and I just give you those numbers.
Well, not necessarily.
Because
you
I
have to adjust it by the race of the criminal perpetrator.
No, I just did that for you. I'm using your numbers, and according to your numbers, African Americans are 4 or 5 times more likely than their percentage of the population to be killed by police than their white counterparts. I just wanted to give you that based on your numbers.
Actually, the studies I've seen have suggested 2 things. One, that in fact, police are less likely to shoot at a black suspect, a little bit more likely to shoot at white. However, that police are more inclined to use non-lethal force in a contact with an African American suspect. So those are in terms of the statistics, that's what it looks like to me.
Any data that you have that shows that African Americans are less likely to die at the hands of police or be shot or shot at, to me is a incorrect analysis. But I am interested in seeing it. So if you have it, please see it. I won't call it any names. But if that data exists, I would be more than happy to see it. And since you're sending me that data, can you send me the data of African Americans within the Department of Justice? How many you have in leadership ranks all the way down? Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I would remind Mr. Jordan, Mr. Biggs, and Mr. Johnson to stop violating the rules of the committee, to stop violating the safety of the members of the committee, to stop holding themselves out as not caring by refusing to wear their masks.
Is it permissible to drink
It
sipped
is
coffee?
not permissible.
Not to drink.
We can't drink.
That guy's not wearing his mask. You're yelling at people for not wearing their mask while you're not wearing your mask.
Mr. Gates is recognized.
No, he's
No,
already went.
he went, and that's why I took off my mask, Mr. Chairman.
It's my turn. I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Mr. Jordan is recognized.
Mr. Attorney General, let's clear up a few things. Judge Berman Jackson agreed with your Stone sentencing recommendation. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, she said, I am concerned 7 to 9 years would be greater than necessary. I agree with the defense and with the government's second memorandum. So it couldn't be more clear. They agreed with you.
That's right.
Lafayette Square. Would St. John's Church be standing today if you had not taken action?
Well, I think that was on Sunday. That was on Sunday night, and I think law enforcement did.
Look
use
at how
tear
he's
gas,
not
and my
even
understanding
grabbing
is
the ones
night
that like
they cleared
defend
the way
him,
so
you know?
that the fire trucks could get in to save St. John's Church.
The church.
That was on Sunday night, though.
Understand the time frame, but would it be standing today if there had not been action taken by federal law enforcement and local law enforcement?
Right.
38 people unmasked Michael Flynn's name 49 times in a 2-month time frame. 7 people at the Treasury Department unmasked Michael Flynn's name. Is this an issue that Mr. Durham is looking into?
I've asked another U.S. attorney to look into the issue of unmasking because of, the high number of unmaskings and some that do not readily appear to have been in the line of normal business.
Wait a minute, so I want to be clear. So there is another investigation on that issue specifically going on at the Justice Department right now?
Yes.
Wow, that's great. So Mr. Durham is looking at how the whole Trump-Russia thing started. You have another U.S. attorney. Can you give us that U.S. attorney's name, or is that something you're comfortable doing? Or?
John Bash of Texas.
John Bash of Texas is looking specifically at the fact
At unmasking.
38 people, 49 times unmasked Michael Flynn's name, and probably other unmaskings that took place in the final days of the Obama-Biden administration. Is that accurate?
Actually, a much longer period of time.
Even before that?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. I appreciate that. That's information that the committee did not know. Are peaceful protests violent, Mr. Attorney General?
No.
Do peaceful protests destroy businesses?
No.
Do peaceful protests injure officers?
No.
Do peaceful protests attack civilians?
No.
Do peaceful protests burn down buildings?
No.
The video we played, it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch to see that happening in our great country. But there was the start of it was almost laughable, where you have the reporter saying, as a building is burning behind him, it's not generally speaking an unruly protest. It's mostly just a protest. I mean, it's almost laughable when you have the reporter saying, I guess he's saying it's not a fire, it's just a burning building. I guess he's saying it's a peaceful burning building. A few weeks ago,
I had to put on my mask. We just got yelled
well, let me
at.
ask you this. I want to go right to this. Is defunding the police a rational policy?
No, I think, if anything, I'm more concerned that the police be adequately funded today and get more resources. A lot of the things we need to do to address some of the concerns people have about what they saw in Minneapolis are going to take some resources, some of the training that we have to do. And one of the difficulties in our country, it's not a difficulty, it's a fact, we have 18,000 law enforcement agencies. Most of them are very, very small. And so we have to find a way of training, making sure the training is pushed out.
Is it dangerous? Dangerous to defund the police?
Excuse me, bitch!
Extremely dangerous. And some of the ordinances you're seeing
Apology
pass are also
accepted.
dangerous. Are you familiar with the letter that Chief of Police of Seattle, Carmen Best, sent to business owners and residents in that city?
Yes, I am saying that, she cannot protect, she can't do her job. Her police force cannot do the job because of
exactly what she said. Gives officers the policy they're trying to pass. Thank goodness the court stopped it. The policy they're trying to pass gives officers no ability, and she emphasized no, not us, not you, Mr. Attorney, not me, gives officers no ability to safely intercede to preserve property in the midst of large, violent crowds. She also said in that letter, again, she's taken the leadership and responsibility to tell the business owners, the citizens, that she's supposed to serve. She also tells them in that letter, I've done my due diligence on informing the council numerous times. So she's saying, I tried to tell them, these people won't listen to me. And then finally she says this, and this is the scary part. This is why it's so dangerous. She says this in her letter: Seattle police will have an adjusted deployment. That's a nice way of saying you're on your own. We can't help you. That is how scary this defund the police. And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. These same cities sent you a letter last week. The same week Chief of Police Best does this to the residents and citizens of her city. Her mayor sends you a letter blaming you, blaming the federal government for the violence that is happening in these cities. That is how ridiculous the left's position has become. I appreciate the work you're doing, Mr. Attorney General. I'm over time. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. Mr. Jeffries.
Mr. Barr, the job of the Attorney General is to defend the best interests of the people and serve as the people's lawyer. But during your time as Attorney General, you have consistently undermined democracy, undermined the Constitution, and undermined the health, safety, and well-being of the American people, all to personally benefit Donald Trump. Now, you just testified that there's no mechanism for a president to contest an election that has clearly been won by the opponent. Mr. Attorney General, what will you do if Donald Trump loses the election on November 3rd, but refuses to leave office on January 20th?
If the results are clear, I would leave office.
Do you believe that there is any basis or legitimacy to Donald Trump's recent claim that he can't provide an answer as to whether he would leave office?
I'm not familiar with these comments or the context in which they occurred, so I'm not going to give commentary on that.
Okay, thank you. He just stated that publicly about a week ago to Fox News. Mr. Barr, during a radio interview this spring with Hugh Hewitt, you praised President Trump's coronavirus response as superb, correct?
Who did?
You did.
Okay.
Over 150,000 Americans have died. More than 4 million Americans have been infected. More than 5 million Americans have lost their health care. Over 100,000 small businesses have permanently closed. More than 50 million Americans are out of work. This is not the outcome of superb leadership. What we've gotten from Donald Trump is exactly the opposite. Let's explore.
Well, I disagree with that.
That was not a question, that was a statement. Let's explore. In February, President Trump falsely claimed that the number of coronavirus cases would go from 15 to 0 in a few days. Was that superb, yes or no?
I'd have to see the context in which it was said.
Here's the context. The number of cases didn't go down to 0. It's over 4 million. Let's go to March. In that month, President Trump said, "I take no responsibility at all for the failure in testing." Was that superb, yes or no?
It was accurate. The problem with the testing system was a function of President Obama's mishandling of the CDC and his efforts to centralize everything in the CDC when they didn't have the
Thank you, Mr. Barr. That is inaccurate. That's a myth.
It wasn't until this administration. It wasn't until
claiming my time. In April, President Trump irresponsibly suggested
This is actually getting kind of interesting.
that
I
the
like
American
this shit. This is
people
hilarious.
inject themselves with bleach. Was that superb? Yes or no?
That's not what I heard.
That's exactly what he said. That's what the American people heard, and you know it, and you can't defend it. Let's move on to May. In that month, on National Nurses Day, President Trump falsely called PPE shortages fake news, while nurses and other healthcare professionals resorted to wearing trash bags and ski goggles to protect themselves. Fake news. Was that superb? Yes or no?
I think the administration did a good job of mustering PPE, and the national supply of PPE was run down during the Obama administration and never replaced.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. The answer is no, it was not superb.
Let me ask you this question.
By June,
Thank you.
President Trump
Nope,
irresponsibly
that wasn't the answer. The
continued
answer
to
was this.
refuse to wear a mask despite the public health guidance from his own experts. Was that superb? Yes or no?
Which guidance? The earlier guidance that the masks wouldn't work?
You know exactly the guidance that we're talking about. The CDC and Dr. Fauci in April recommended that the American people wear a mask, but Donald Trump has become the poster boy for the anti-mask movement.
Donald Trump has probably tested more than any other human being on the face of
Yeah,
the earth.
Mr.
as
Barr,
it's every-
the answer is the refusal to wear a mask is not superb. Last question. In July, President Trump falsely claimed that 99% of COVID-19 cases are, quote, totally harmless. Was that superb? Yes or no?
I think essentially what he was saying is that the fatality rate relatively is very low, very low.
The answer is 150,000 Americans are dead.
Why are you asking
It
him
has been a
questions if you're just
failure
going to
of
tell him
epic
the
proportions.
answers?
In fact, Donald
Oh my
Trump's
God, this is
response to the
ridiculous.
coronavirus
This guy.
pandemic has been the worst failure of any
Let me ask you a
president in
question.
American
Nope, that's wrong.
history.
The answer is this. Hey,
And the
let me
American
ask you a
people
question. What's your
have paid
favorite
the
color?
price.
Red. No, your favorite color is
yield
yellow.
Gentleman yields back. Who seeks recognition?
Well, and
Can I get clarification on
I
that
think it's my
question?
turn to
You
speak.
know what I'm asking.
Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? Then I seek recognition, sir. Bless your heart. Thank you. Attorney General Barr, Chairman Nadler opened up his statement by saying you can no longer hide behind a legal fiction. That caused me some consternation. I had no idea what he was talking about. Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
I don't recall that phrase in what context.
Well, who knows what context? I mean, he was just kind of rattling on there. But he was attacking you and your performance in virtually everything he could, and said you can no longer hide behind a legal fiction. And I didn't see any connection with anything else he had been saying. So I wondered if you had seen anything. And apparently, you didn't see anything either. The next person to ask questions was the gentlelady from California who consistently referred to civilian federal agents as federal troops, and intimating, if you will, that Portland was peaceable until federal civilian agents arrived on the scene. Essentially, it's kind of analogous to blaming a fire department for showing up to put out a fire and then being blamed for starting the fire. Attorney General Barr, let's just have it on the record. Was there violence and attempts to burn down, vandalize the building, and attack civilian employees of the federal government prior to any other federal agents or the reinforcements being sent in of federal agents?
Yeah, my recollection is our main effort to reinforce was around the 4th of July period, and it had been going on for quite a while before that.
Let's talk about Lafayette Square for a second. Leading up to June 1st, you had violent mobs disobeying the 11 p.m. curfew. They set fire to parked cars, demolished coffee shops and banks, burned American flags, and even intentionally set fire to St. John's Episcopal Church near Lafayette Square. Secret Service and Park Police appropriate use of safe restorative force actually cleared that up. In total, however, 51 U.S. Park Police officers were injured during the weekend leading up to the perimeter expansion. Do you want to expand on the actions regarding Lafayette Park?
Right, so for the 29th, 30th, and 31st, there was unprecedented rioting right around the White House, very violent. During that time, as you say, about 50 Park Police and a comparable number, is my recollection, of Secret Service. So we had about around 90 officers injured. I'm talking about things like concussions, one was operated on, and so forth. We had the president, it was so bad that, as it's been reported, the Secret Service recommended the president go down to the shelter. We had a breach of the Treasury Department. The historical building on Lafayette Park was burned down, the lodge. St. John's was set on fire. Bricks were thrown at the police repeatedly. They took crowbars and pried up the pavers on Lafayette Park and threw those at the police. Balloons of caustic liquid were thrown on the police. And it was clear when I arrived at the White House on Monday, there was total consensus that we couldn't allow that to happen so close to the White House, that kind of rioting. And therefore, we had to move the perimeter out one block and push it up toward I Street. And there was already a plan in being at that point that the Park Police and the Secret Service had worked out the night before which was to put the perimeter further away and then give them time to put a non-scalable fence across the northern part of the park. During Monday, the factors that led to the timing of it were that movement was going to be made as soon as there were enough units in place to actually perform it, and units were very slow in getting into place throughout the day, much to my frustration because I wanted it moved before there was a big buildup of demonstrators. And also the fencing had to be delivered. And when those things were accomplished, the tactical commander in charge of the park police proceeded with the movement of pushing the perimeter. So this was something conceived of long before and didn't turn on the nature of the crowd, although I would say the crowd was very unruly. And while the tactical considerations were made by the park police,
I think he knew.
I
think he knew when he walked in what this would be.
To say that this had to do with a photo op is, and I don't mean to analogize this to a military operation, but it's akin to saying that we invaded the Philippines in World War II so Douglas MacArthur could walk through the surf on the beach. One follows
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, they have Barr there, and how many times they're mentioning Trump. Like, it's not about Trump at that point, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Gentleman yields back, Mr. Swalwell.
Mr. Barr, have you ever intervened other than to help the president's friend?
Yeah, no, they know what they're happening.
Any other
For
case
sure.
where a prosecutor had filed a sentencing recommendation with the court?
A sentencing recommendation?
Yeah, have you ever intervened other than that case with the president's friend?
Not that I recall. If you're talking,
Does that seem like something you'd recall, where you would?
Well, I'm saying I can't really remember my first. If you let me finish the question, I can't remember. 30 years ago, I was Attorney General.
As Attorney General now.
No, I didn't. But that's because issues come up to the Attorney General within a dispute, and I have never heard of a dispute. I've never heard of a dispute in the department where line prosecutors threaten to quit
Well, it's a pretty big deal, and they
because of a discussion over sentencing.
Americans
akin
from
to
both
this.
parties are concerned that in Donald Trump's America, there's two systems of justice. One for Mr. Trump and his cronies, and another for the rest of us. But that can only happen if you enable it. At your confirmation hearing, you were asked, do you believe a president could lawfully issue a pardon in exchange for the recipient's promise to not incriminate him? You said, no.
Not to what?
That would be a crime. You were asked, could a president issue a pardon in exchange for the recipient's promise to not incriminate him? And you responded, no, that would be a crime. Is that right?
Yes, I said that.
You said a crime. You didn't say it'd be wrong. You didn't say it'd be unlawful. You said it would be a crime. And when you said that a president swapping a pardon to silence a witness would be a crime, you were promising the American people that if you saw that, you would do something about it. Is that right?
That's right.
Now, Mr. Barr, are you investigating Donald Trump for commuting the prison sentence of his longtime friend and political advisor, Roger Stone?
No.
Why not?
Why should I?
Mr. Stone was convicted by a jury on 7 counts of lying.
Why
in the Russia
should I?
investigation. He bragged that he lied to save
God, our government's
Trump's
great, right, Tovar?
But why would he lie? Your prosecutors, Mr. Barr, told a jury that Stone lied because the truth looked bad for Donald Trump. And what truth is that? Well, Donald Trump denied in written answers to the Russia investigators that he talked to Roger Stone during the time Roger Stone was in contact with agents of a Russian influence operation. There's evidence that Trump and Stone indeed did talk during that time. You would agree that it's a federal crime to lie under oath. Is that right?
Yes.
It's a crime for you, it's a crime for me, and it's certainly a crime for the President of the United States. Is that right?
Yes.
So if Donald Trump lied to the Mueller investigators, which you agree would be a crime, then Roger Stone was in a position to expose
Did he ever
Donald
go
Trump's
under
lies.
oath, though? You just said he was
Are
under
you familiar with
oath.
the
He never
December
went under
3rd,
oath.
2018 tweet where Donald Trump said Roger Stone had shown guts by not testifying against him?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
You don't read the president's tweets?
No.
Well, there's a lot of evidence in the president's tweets, Mr. Attorney General. I think you should start reading them because he said Mr. Stone showed guts.
Except
but
for
on July
tweets aren't
10th
evidence.
of this year,
This
Roger
is
Stone
insane.
declared to a reporter,
This is how
"I had
our whole
29
fucking
or
system
30
devolves into
conversations with
garbage.
Trump
Even
during the
more
campaign
garbage, I
period.
guess I should say.
Trump knows I was under
Why,
enormous
like,
pressure to turn on
what
him.
you fucking
It would have
deserve.
eased my situation
Yeah, right.
considerably, but I didn't. The prosecutors wanted me to play Judas. I refused. Are you familiar with that Stone statement?
Actually, I'm not.
So how can you sit here and tell us why should I investigate the President of the United States if you're not even aware
That's not
of
what
the
he said.
facts
He said he wasn't
concerning the
investigating
President using
Stone.
the hard intercommutation power
Jesus
to
Christ.
swap the silence of a witness?
Because we require, a reliable predicate before we open a criminal investigation. I don't consider it. I consider it a very Rube Goldberg theory that you have.
Well, it sounds like you're hearing this
And
for
by
the
the
first
way,
time
if I
today.
applied,
And what
if I
concerns
applied
me,
this
Mr. Attorney
standard, there'd be a
General-
lot more people under investigation.
Mr. Attorney General, the very same day that Roger Stone said that, Donald Trump,
That's one of the,
no surprise,
the true
commuted
two
his
standards of justice were really
So-
during the tail end of the Obama
Mr. Attorney General, let's
I've never really
turn
liked
to the
Barr,
Michael
but like
Cohen
he's kind of eating these guys
Are
alive.
you aware, sir, that Michael Cohen, after being released from prison, was asked to not engage with the media, including to write a book? Were you aware that that was going to be asked of him?
Was I aware?
Yes.
No.
Do you know if anyone else in your department was aware?
Maybe I should tell you what happened.
Why don't you tell us what happened?
Okay. He was furloughed from the Bureau of Prisons.
No. Why don't you tell us why he was asked?
I will
to sign
tell
an
you,
agreement not to-
because something that people don't seem to understand is that his home confinement was not being supervised by the Bureau of Prisons.
Now, the Bureau of
It was being supervised by the probation office, which is part of the U.S. court system. And
Are
it was
you
the
aware-
U.S. court system that had the requirements about
And
not
yes,
writing.
that U.S. court system called your actions retaliatory. Do you agree with that?
No, so all I know is what has been said in court before the judge and in the record,
Mr.
which
Barr-
is that the individual was then called by the U.S. court system saying that this guy Cohen is uncooperative, he's not agreeing to the conditions. And at that point, a Bureau of Prisons person made the decision that he was no longer eligible for home confinement.
Conditions that a federal judge said no other inmate had ever been asked of in his experience. Mr. Barr, you told ABC News that the president's tweets sometimes make your job impossible. But sir, your job is only impossible if you enable the president's corrupt schemes. Now yield back.
That's so funny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, the Constitution says the President shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. Do you note any other limitations in the Constitution on the President's power to pardon?
No.
Has the President exceeded that power?
No.
So wait, if he didn't want to answer a
My,
question, could he
colleague
just
George
say, I
Mr.
yield
Johnson
back?
implied that in challenging the sentencing recommendation of Roger Stone, you were doing the bidding of the President. He didn't want to hear your response. I would.
Well, no, I was, Roger Stone, I never discussed our sentencing recommendation with anyone outside the Department of Justice. It was a very condensed period of time. I first heard, I made the decision that we shouldn't take a position as to the precise sentence, but should leave it up to the judge. And we should not affirmatively advocate for 7 to 9 years. And I made that on Monday, the 10th. And that night, the department filed, and it didn't reflect what I had decided. So that night, I told people we had to fix it first thing in the morning.
I think it's funny that producer Mikey almost got banned from
yeah,
here, but now he got
as soon as I
banned from
got
Steel
in,
Toe.
We went forward with a plan to file. At that point, I learned about the president's tweet because I don't monitor the president's tweets.
Can't give that guy power.
And I hesitated because I knew that I would be attacked for doing it, and people would argue that I did it because of the tweet. But I felt at the end of the day, I really had to go forward with our filing because it was the right thing to do, and I'm glad the judge agreed with it.
We're learning more and more about the targeting and prosecution and extortion of Michael Flynn by partisan officials at the FBI. No one has been held accountable for this grotesque abuse of power. Knowing that agents with a political agenda can take anything that someone says, edit it, misrepresent it, prosecute it, and then extort confessions by threatening family members, and to do so with impunity, why would anyone in his right mind ever want to talk to an FBI agent again?
Well, I don't, I haven't reached judgments, and I'm not suggesting that all those facts you set forth are true, and we have not, at this point, challenged the actions I've defended the actions of the prosecutors in this case in court. The order of business right now is, knowing what we know now, we don't think any of the U.S. attorneys in the department would have prosecuted this case. partly because of the behavior of the FBI, but also because the evidence is not there to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And part of what I'm trying to establish is that we will use the same standards for everybody before we indict anybody. And this goes for both sides. We won't prosecute anybody unless there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt that they committed a crime. And not some kind of esoteric made-up crime, but a meat and potatoes crime.
For more than 3 years, the most powerful agencies in our government took information that was fabricated by agents of a political campaign that they knew was fraudulent, used it as justification to launch an investigation alleging treason against a presidential candidate, then leaked the existence of that investigation in a manner that was clearly calculated to affect the outcome of the election, and then failing that, used it in a largely successful attempt to obstruct the duly elected president. Are you going to be able to right this wrong before it becomes a precedent for future election interference by corrupt officials in our justice and intelligence agencies?
You know, I really can't predict that. I think, as you know, John Durham is looking at all these matters. COVID did delay that action for a while, but he's working very diligently. And, you know, justice is not something you order up on a schedule like you're ordering a pizza.
Well, there are many of us who are concerned that if you were succeeded by someone like Keith Ellison as Attorney General, that this will become an institutionalized practice and the investigation of Mr. Durham will simply go away.
I understand your concern.
One more thing, a term we keep hearing from the left is, oh, these are mostly peaceful protests, mostly peaceful. It seems to me that you either are or you're not. Calling what's happening in our cities mostly peaceful protests is a lot like calling Scott Peterson a mostly faithful husband or Al Capone a mostly law-abiding businessman. There is a constitutional right to peaceably assemble. Where does that right stop?
When it becomes violence, criminal activity. You know, and that's the challenge here. I mean,
when it
you
becomes
have a lot
violent.
of people who are out protesting and demonstrating, and that's important First Amendment activity that we believe strongly in and try to protect.
Wait, so well, he's got to. Why would you care if he begs for subs? He's got to get subs, bro.
Get into those crowds and then start engaging in very violent activity and hijack it. And a lot of protesters have been telling law enforcement and providing information to us about these people who are not with them, they're not demonstrators, but they're coming in. And a lot of the demonstrators leave when that happens because they see what's happening themselves.
Would you call that violence a myth?
Gentleman's time?
No.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Barr, for being here today. I'd like to ask you some questions about the legal standard for seizing
The guy
and
not there is
arresting
thanking them
protesters.
for being there. That's a bold
Under
move.
the Fourth Amendment,
Bold move.
it requires probable cause before you can seize and arrest a protester, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and the probable cause has to be particularized to a particular person. So if a protester was merely standing around in a crowd in the vicinity of someone else suspected of criminal activity, you cannot arrest that peaceful protester. In other words, there's no such thing as probable cause by mere association, correct?
Well, not strictly, but I'll say that, you know, you do need particularized probable cause.
Okay, and if there's no probable cause, then
If someone
you can't
jumps
arrest
into a
protester,
getaway car
correct?
and there are 3 or 4 people in there, that might be enough to give you probable cause, just those circumstances. You don't need it on each individual.
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Attorney General. If there's no probable cause, you can't arrest a protester, correct?
I said at the beginning, arrest has to be predicated on probable cause.
All right. Now, an arrest can also occur whether or not the federal official says it's an arrest. So, for example, if a federal officer takes a protester into custody, transport that protester, let's say, to a federal building, detains a person for questioning, that will constitute an arrest whether or not the federal official says the person's under arrest, correct?
Well, that would require a very intensive review of all the specifics involved.
Actually, it wouldn't. In the case of Dunaway versus New York, which is black letter law for over 40 years, the question was whether the police violated the 4th and 15th Amendments when without probable cause to arrest, they took petitioners into custody, transported him to a police station, and detained him for questioning. The answer is yes, that would constitute an
No,
arrest.
the answer is that, Fourth Amendment is ultimately governed by reasonableness, and there can be circumstances. The question sometimes is, when does
It's
something
almost like this
actually
guy
become
knows the
You're
law.
claiming my time. I'm citing. This is not a trick question.
Every time.
Mr. Barr. I'm just citing you.
Every time they disagree, I'm reclaiming
So
my
here's
time.
a problem. Under the standard black letter law, which has been in effect for over 40 years, what the federal forces in Portland did was unconstitutional. Federal forces in full combat gear, in the dark of night, grabbed a protester who was peacefully standing there, forced him into an unmarked van, drove him to a separate location, searched him, detained him, and questioned him. That is what police states do. That's what authoritarian regimes do.
But I don't think those were the facts.
That's not, I haven't asked you a question yet, Mr. Barr. What the federal officials did was illegal because they didn't have probable cause. How do we know that? Because Deputy Director of the Federal Protective Service, Chris Klein, admitted it on national TV. Deputy Director Klein said that the individual that they were questioning was in a crowd and in an area where another individual was aiming a laser.
It was a radio
at the
show.
eyes of
Now I
officers.
hear Twitch and Twitch. You were on
That's
Twitch
guilt by
commenting.
association.
You can't
That's
bitch about
what
it
the
being a
Fourth
radio
Amendment
show when you're
prohibits.
interacting with it on Twitch.
Deputy
That's
Director
stupid.
Klein further stated that the protester was released after federal officials concluded, quote, they did not have what they needed, unquote, which again shows there's no probable cause. And it appears that federal Deputy Director Klein appears to understand that there was no probable cause because he essentially justifies that action as saying it wasn't an arrest. He calls it, quote, a simple engagement, unquote. I'm a former prosecutor. I've never heard that term, a simple engagement, because it's a made-up excuse. What these federal officials did was an arrest. They grabbed a peaceful protester, they forced him into a van, drove him to another location, questioned him. That is exactly what the Supreme Court prohibited over 40 years ago.
So
And
I
that's not an
obviously,
isolated incident.
I obviously don't know
In the Washington Post, I haven't asked you a question yet. In a Washington Post article on July 24th entitled Operation Diligent Valor,
I haven't asked you a question that I'm about to tell you the answer of
there's
yet.
no basis for these arrests. They said, quote, at times they have grabbed an individual
Hey,
and taken
Tovar.
them inside the courthouse for questioning before determining that they had no probable cause to charge him with any crime, unquote. Deputy Director Klein said that they
What's your favorite
coordinate with the U.S.
manufacturer of
Attorney's
cars?
Office on all of these arrests.
My favorite
I urge you
Yeah.
to instruct your federal officials to comply with the Constitution, and I ask you to investigate these arrests. We
No,
need them
you're wrong.
for
It's
environment
Mazda. I
and
yield my
for
time.
We do not live in a police
not
state.
wrong.
We're better than that. I yield back.
I was actually going to say Subarus.
Yeah, you do like Subarus as of yet.
Since Representative Liu didn't allow you any time to answer his allegations, would you care to answer any of his?
Come to be fond of like some Toyotas and BMWs, but I like I don't know. I'm a car slut. I like
You're just talking. You're talking over the joke excessively now.
Yeah, I know that's what I'm
to
doing.
effectuate arrests of the ringleaders or the people who are engaged
God,
in
this,
violence.
I'm not the
that
biggest
they
Barr
saw
fan, but he
with
is
lasers
winning
and
this.
So forth, and they went out. They were immediately swarmed.
Of course he is. He knows what he's doing.
Right, but it's just so funny because they're like, oh, what's this? And he's like, well, it depends legally on that. No, that's not the answer. Well, it literally is. He's.
Specific information as to individuals
It's just really
who were
funny.
seen doing things and
It's just
identified
you're trying to pin down a guy
to
that's
pick
not
them
going to be
up,
pinnable.
when there was
Well, and a
less
guy that
investigative
understands the law of these
response.
interactions way more than
The
you
fact
do.
that if you have information that someone has a laser and is using it, and later pick him up and he doesn't have it, it doesn't mean that there wasn't probable cause. It means he doesn't have the laser. The question is,
What's
was it
the whole
reasonable
purpose
for
of
you to
this? Like, what are
rely
they
on the
trying to get
information
out of
that you
conducting
had
all
and
of
the
this?
identification of that individual?
Nothing. This is
In some
what the
cases,
Dems
it
have been
could be
doing
a
for 4 years.
misidentification. In
They
other
want to publicly
cases, it could be the
pageant
person
stuff and
who
not
picks the
accomplish
laser.
anything
So
and
there
act
is a
like they're doing something. I mean, this
distinction
is
between
this
whether
is
the
the
person
real dark secret that nobody's talking about with the Democratic Party is that even if you are a Democrat, if you really hate Trump and you're a Democrat, at some point you have to look at the people running your government and say, what have they done in the last 4 years? Nothing. Fucking crazy. I mean, like,
What
it's...
have they done in the last 12? The last 12?
Well, but I mean,
Tell ya.
specifically,
You probably
they tried
know
to tattoo a
this.
dude
My
for 4 years they
constituents are
couldn't get.
scared.
They got him
Americans
impeached
are
and couldn't get rid
scared.
of him.
I mean, they watch the TV.
Like,
they
like
see
this
all
guy
this
should be
rioting,
like
looting
demonstratively
going on,
the easiest
statues
president to
being
get rid
torn
of.
down.
You would think. I mean,
in
again,
Arizona,
unless the stuff that you're
where I'm
talking about
from,
is strictly
more guns are
conspiracy.
being sold
Like,
than ever.
you're telling me
I
that,
think
like,
there's
with
more
all the
new
hatred, they
gun
left
owners,
evidence out of Russia?
than
I
ever.
don't agree with that. You know what I mean?
And,
Like, it's just crazy.
This has to stop, and I think that it's really important, as the saying goes, that in order to solve a problem, the first step is to realize there's a problem. And so it always, I find it very disturbing, should I say, that Chairman Nadler denies that Antifa even exists. He said it to a reporter. He said on the floor of the United States House of Representatives that it was a fantasy, a made-up fantasy. And then in this very room, just recently, Congresswoman Jayapal, who represents the Seattle area, said, when I was talking about the autonomous zone and the takeover, she said, the area is just a few miles from where I sit right now, and there is no takeover. There is no takeover. She also said, lies are being spread by my colleagues in this committee. This area is perfectly peaceful. She also said, my Republican colleagues keep saying the Seattle Police Precinct was taken over by protesters. This is incorrect. Incorrect. No one has taken over that building.
Yeah, but they
Mr. Attorney
did.
General, is that your understanding of what happened there? Do you agree with Ms. Jayapal that there was no takeover? It was just
Jayapal.
peaceful?
If you're going to say my name, please say it right. It's Jayapal.
Jayapal, would you agree with that? And also, in answer, why do you think these autonomous zones in Democrat-led cities are dangerous to America?
Well, starting with they're dangerous because they are purporting to keep on the outside duly constituted authority of the government. They're also, to me, outrageous because the people who are living now under this autonomous zone haven't selected the government. They've selected the duly authorized government of the city and the state. So it's quite an outrage that people would use force to take over an area. What makes me concerned for the country is this is the first time in my memory that the leaders of one of our great two political parties, the Democratic Party, are not coming out and condemning mob violence and the attack on federal courts. Why can't we just say, the violence against federal courts has to stop? Could we hear something like that?
Mr. Attorney General, I totally agree. I support what you're doing, and I support what President Trump is doing for law and order in our country, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The committee will stand in recess for 5 minutes.
All right, we're going to cut away here. They're doing a recess for 5 minutes. We're almost done anyways. It doesn't matter. If you want to watch more of that live, here's the link. Let's see. What do you guys want to... What should we end on? I don't even know. Feel like we don't have enough time to really get into a car talk. We got like 15 minutes. There's a new Stossel. Let's just do that. Let's do some Stossel stuff. And this one's about SpaceX, which is kind of interesting. I'm into it. Here we go. Here's some Stossel for you, baby. Right down your goddamn Stossel hole.
Launch control, Dragon, loud and clear.
These two American astronauts spent more than 2 months in space.
Ignition, liftoff.
Their launch was the first manned launch from the U.S. in 10 years.
The Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon, go NASA.
Go NASA? Wait, why NASA? NASA hasn't sent anyone into space for years. This rocket was launched by Elon Musk.
Musk had not only done something that it was previously thought that only the governments of superpowers could do, he had done things that they thought they couldn't do, that no one could do.
Robert Zubrin, author of The Case for Space, points out that private companies now do what NASA couldn't even imagine doing: send people into space affordably.
This is the potential of free enterprise.
Apollo 11, this
is Houston. 50 years ago, NASA did send astronauts to the moon.
We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained.
Makes me wonder, why did the moon landing succeed?
Apollo was purpose-driven. We wanted to astonish the world with what free people could do.
But after that success, NASA became a typical government agency. Over budget, behind schedule.
When you don't have a truly commanding purpose, the purpose of the program becomes to supply money to various suppliers.
Like Lockheed Martin, where Zubrin worked, and where he discovered a way for this rocket to carry twice as much weight.
It doubled the payload capability for 10% extra cost. They said to us, look, if the Air Force wants us to improve the Titan, they'll pay us to do it.
Why would a private contractor not innovate? Because
the incentive structure is all messed up.
NASA pays contractors development costs and then adds 10% profit. The more projects cost, the bigger the contractor's profit.
You have good people engaged in cost maximization because you just gave them incentive to do that.
We have not been good at maintaining schedule, and we have not been good at maintaining cost.
And they aren't good at innovating. Governments never are. Only recently did the Pentagon stop using these floppy disks.
Astronauts would bring their laptops with them in space because the shuttle computers were obsolete.
When they saw that the astronauts were bringing their own computers, why didn't they upgrade?
Because they had an entire philosophy that various components had to be space rated, and the process of space rating something was very bureaucratic and costly.
Costly was okay with NASA, as long as spaceships were assembled in many congressmen's districts.
In some ways, NASA is a very large job program.
Aerospace lawyer James Dunstan.
By spreading its centers across the country, NASA can get more support from more different congressmen.
The current request calls for more than $21 billion.
We'll welcome you back to Texas to spend lots of money anytime.
But now, private competition has lowered the cost of getting to space. 11 years ago, an Obama committee concluded building a rocket as powerful as this
would take 12 years and cost $36 billion. Musk did it in 6 years for less than $1 billion. Because it was his money he was spending.
One Musk innovation was reusable rocket boosters. For years, NASA dropped theirs into the ocean.
Why would they throw it away?
Because that's the way it's always been done.
But Musk thought,
if you had to get a new plane every time you flew somewhere, very few people could afford to fly.
So he found a way to have them land safely so they can be used again. Zubrin suggested that to his bosses 20 years ago.
And the Falcons have landed.
I went to a vice president and I pitched it to him. And he said, yeah, it's a real cute idea, Bob, but if we sell one of these, we're out of business. They wanted to keep the cost of space launch high.
But now that there's a list of competitors, launch prices are crashing.
Now there's a competition.
Bezos has Blue Origin, Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic,
Boeing, SpaceX,
aerospace giant Lockheed Martin.
There's also Chinese SpaceX wannabes.
Building satellite launching rockets.
But Musk is testing still newer ideas.
By the time the Chinese copy him and have something as good as what he has now, he'll have something better.
Like Starship, his bigger spacecraft.
Taller than the Statue of Liberty.
It's meant to take people to Mars and back.
With a system like Starship, you could travel on Earth from anywhere to anywhere in less than an hour, flying through space, because there's no friction in space.
What might be next?
You just don't know. You know, Benjamin Franklin was once asked after he did one of his electricity demonstrations, "This is fascinating, Dr. Franklin, but what possible use could this electricity ever have?" And he answered, "Of what use is a baby?"
All our most wonderful inventions started as babies. Government didn't know what to do with a Model T, the early computer, the Wright brothers plane. It took competing entrepreneurs pursuing profit to turn them into the great things we have now. Let's celebrate the entrepreneurs who break government's old rules and take us to new places.
Reigniting the dream of space.
I hope you learn from these videos.
All right.
We count on people like you to help.
We're gonna share it. Bloop. And we'll go over to the show talk and share it there. Tovar, are you still in here? I don't know. I think he might have left. It sounded like he was driving before, so who knows? All right.
I am still here, and yes, I am still on the road.
Oh yeah, nice. What are you doing tomorrow?
I'm supposed to be working on cars tomorrow, I guess.
Oh,
Why?
right. I was gonna say we should do some car talk about that secret shit we were talking about.
Oh yeah. I got some time Thursday, I think, because I don't think I have to work until like
Thursday is no good. That's wrestling day.
Yeah, well, sucks.
Yeah, well, whatever. we'll get to it eventually.
We'll get around to it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Just Elon Musk lowering the price of fucking. That's an interesting thing. How the government said that would take, 12 years and like billions of dollars, and Elon Musk did it in like 2 in under $1 billion.
Yeah. Well, and his goal before he dies is to give everybody like.
He's
AI
gonna give us free
internet.
internet. That's gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, not there's that, but AI links to that internet, so you can just plug in and then like be a part of the world consciousness or whatever.
Right. Well, and that's.
Talk about some socialism, eh?
That's not socialism. He's a private business.
Everyone connected, bro. That's the definition of
It's
socialism.
an entrepreneur doing something for his community. It's a definition of charity. It's not socialism.
Just plug this.
He's
socialist
not
antenna into the back of your head.
But he's not asking people to pay into a system to have it redistributed. That's not socialism.
Just let me read your thoughts and redistribute.
Yeah, I mean, do you think every kind of sharing is socialism? Because that's not what socialism is.
What I'm here to do is just make up narratives. I thought we went over this a long time ago.
I yield my time back.
I got you.
I reclaim my time. Fuck you. All right. Well, that is Tovar going out to work, I guess.
Yeah, you can look me up on Instagram. Find me on Instagram, everybody. I share pictures of my dog and my car and mechanic stuff. Whatever.
Used to do a show, but you don't do that anymore.
No, I'm semi-retired from being somebody.
Scott Richard Staska says, "Shut up, Toolbar." I think that's what he's calling you, is Toolbar. Get it?
Ooh, good one.
It's not the worst. I mean, it's not necessarily good, but I've definitely heard people do worse.
Yeah, the worst is Tovar. That's the one that was like the go-to
Tovar?
one. Yeah, the one that was like the elementary school burn.
Oh shit! Here comes that Tovar.
Yeah. Tokar. It's just basically any other consonant besides a V.
Yeah, right.
Wait, are you being serious? There's no way.
Maybe there's a joke. There's a joke inside the bag.
All right, we got that. I reclaim those 18 bits. Reclaim them. All right, well, Tovar, we're gonna get out of here. Thanks for jumping in and watching the fucking just absolutely like ridiculous, right? Like fucking. That's our government at work, man. Keep waiting, dude. That shit's a long way off. Soap bar. That's not good. Tell your neighbors to shut up. No guar? Yeah, there was no guar today. That's true. No guar. I drunk. Congratulations. I don't know why Aaron would ban my other than that. I'm older. What are you talking about? People are so weird, man. All right. Give some bits. Give some subscriptions. I'm not leaving unless I get bits or subscription, guys. Just kidding. I'm gonna leave either way. I don't give a fuck. What you think about that? Yeah. I think it's time to go over to that end phase. Are you becoming the band on Aaron's channel? No, I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I don't really know. Here's the thing. I like Aaron. I love Steel Toe, and I know a lot of us are on Steel Toe and interact with it, but I always wanted this to be different. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna bang on Aaron. Aaron's really awesome. What do you want from me? If you want to see me bang on him, I'll be on the Steel Toe Corey show, man. That's what we do. The clip show, baby. All right, we're gonna go to the end phase. Oh, a lot of dense fucking government meetings on this episode. Who saw that coming? Alright, tomorrow we'll do something fun. I got some shit planned. We'll get it. Not you. You're not saying shit about him. Yeah, I'm not gonna... Here's the thing, man. Here's the thing with Aaron, honestly. Like, look, here. You know what? I'll even roll it back a little bit. Here we go. A lot of what Aaron does is create some of the drama to keep the ratings going. Like, Aaron's actually a really awesome dude. Like, I like hanging out with him, and he's a good guy. And that's hard for people to, like, understand. You know, I'm not going to, like, bury the dude. It's fun to razz on him, but, like, I'm not going to talk shit about him when he's not there to defend himself. And especially with, you know, like, Producer Mikey. Like Producer Mikey's been a dick here. I've almost banned him here. So to find out that he's banned on Steel Toe, that's not that surprising. Like, even Producer Mikey admits he's a dick. He admits it. Him and I get along. I don't mind it. Like, whatever. But he admits he's a dick. And that's... When you're a dick, people will treat you like a dick. Yeah, have a good one. We will see you tomorrow. Remember, we do this every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Come back and join us again. You guys have been awesome. We're going back into the NFU. Last few days, it seems some are here to just bash Aaron. That's all. No, I feel it too, JJ. I think people are getting mad or something. I don't know. That drama with Mike is secretly Aaron's elixir. Yeah, man. I mean, it's Aaron is really fun to watch spaz out. That's why we all listen. That's why we watch. I mean, he's fun when he gets animated and angry. It's fun to watch him flip out. And that being said, I think a lot of people that are fans of the show go into something being absolutely stupid as fuck with the intention of annoying him, and then they get mad when he gets annoyed. I've seen it happen on here. I've seen this audience do this shit to me, man. You guys will come here and you'll try to annoy me, and then if I get annoyed, you'll yell at me as if that's fucking what it is. I think that's what we're gonna fucking... Maybe we'll talk about that on the show tonight. I don't know. We'll see. Sometimes I show Mikey my penis and then come on my chest. Okay, well, maybe keep your sweatpants on, buddy. All right. Thanks again for watching. This is Twitch Talk. We do this Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. You guys have been awesome. We will see you next week. Tonight I will be on the Steel Toe Corey show over on the Steel Toe Network at 6 p.m. You guys have been awesome. Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow. We fucking out, baby. We out!
Our town, the microphone above his hip. He didn't suffer fools and he never took no lip.